based on the edition of Panagiotis K. Christou. The initial translation of the sermons contained in The Saving Work of Christ was kindly made available to the editor for correction and improvement by Archimandrite Zacharias of the Holy Monastery of St. John the Baptist, England, and subsequently corrected against the original Greek, oftentimes reworked and given its present form. Responsibility for the final version of the text, of course, rests entirely with the editor. I wish to express my deepest gratitude to Abbot Ephraim and the Brethren of the Holy Monastery of Vatopedi on Mount Athos for so kindly providing me with a copy of the oldest extant icon of St. Gregory, a 1371 wall painting from the Chapel of the Holy Unmercenary Physicians, GK. Anargiroi at Vatopedi, see back cover and P. By. The front cover icon of the Transfiguration is by Theophan the Greek, circa 1330-1410. A note on biblical references. Even though St. Gregory himself used the Septuagint, Greek text of the Old Testament, for purely practical reasons, I have considered it expedient to employ the numbering, names, and wording of the Hebrew Masoretic text, as found in the more familiar authorized King James Version. Scriptural quotations have been adjusted in favor of the Septuagint, rendering only where significant differences occur. Such instances have been indicated by the use of LXX. CV. St. Tikhon's Orthodox Theological Seminary Feast of the Birth of the Mother of God. 8th of September, 2008. 1. One of the Vlat brothers, the other being Marcos, who built Vlatodon Monastery, 1351 to 1371. Dorotheus later also served as Archbishop of Thessalonica, from 1371 to 1379. 2. Philotheus Kokonos, Encomium for Our Father among the Saints, Gregory Palamas, Archbishop of Thessalonica, ed. J.P. Migna, Patrologia Graeca, 151, colon 580, A 581b, see especially Crete, ed. Demetrios G. Tsames, The Hagiological Works of Philotheus Kokkinos, Patriarch of Constantinople, Volume 1. Thessalonian Saints, Center for Byzantine Studies, Thessalonica, 1985, sections 36 to 37, pages 467 to 468. 3. Gregory Palamas, The Complete Works, volumes 9 to 11, in the series Greek Fathers of the Church, numbers 72, 76, and 79. Thessalonica, 1985 to 1986, with an accompanying modern Greek rendering. This is the preliminary text for the critical edition by Professor Vasilios Soutonkas of the School of Theology in the University of Thessalonica, which is to occupy the 6th and final volume in Christou's Gregory Palamas, Writings, Thessalonica, 1962, ff. 1. On Christmas. This is the festival of the Virgin Birth. Our address must be exalted, therefore, in accordance with the greatness of the feast, and enter into the mystery as far as this is accessible and permissible, and time allows, that something of its inner power might be revealed even to us. Please strive, brethren, to lift up your minds as well, that they may better perceive the light of divine knowledge, as though brightly illumined by a holy star.
presupposed in any act of knowledge or cognition. The fact that we're having a conversation, again, assumes things, for example, about meaning, that you can transfer meaning coherently from your head to my head. These are transcendentals, and I think that when you look at all of those transcendentals together, the only way that that world actually makes sense is the kind of world that we see presented in the Bible, that the Orthodox Christian conception of who God is.
But an act of communication can occur between two people where there can be intersubjective agreement. This doesn't mean that the whole rest that they couldn't cover, such as infinity, which is unexpressible in its deployed form, if you will. But infinity refers to stuff that you can do in mathematical axioms. Infinity exists because you can multiply and multiply and multiply. And even if someone cannot picture in his mind infinity, they can certainly picture iterations that would keep going on. They can picture, for example, a computer loop that would, for infinity, times 2, times 2, times 2, times 2. And so it's not because the thing is pictured differently in a human mind that the concept is not pictured by the human mind. It is pictured in a form that the human mind can and does. But I will also say that these infinities, they are not necessarily true independent of the human mind. They are still products of the human mind, in that it's a human mind that can imagine these iterated forms of infinity.
But the human mind didn't imagine a Mandelbrot set. It was something discovered.
Didn't imagine what, sorry?
The human mind didn't imagine a Mandelbrot set. It was something that we thought could be, and then it was actually proven when the computers had the ability to demonstrate that you could. Theology, there's an attempt at this through Augustine's light theory and so forth, but I don't believe that it works. And it doesn't work because of what we're going to see later on in lecture 2 when we get to the debate between Maximus and Pyrrhus, because of what's called absolute divine simplicity. Let's set that aside for a moment because we're not there yet. We're going to do some more of these basic philosophical and theological terms that are going to give us a grounding by which we can then sort of leap into that next level of discussion. So next we come to building on what we saw before. We're going to look at how the principles that we saw with the one and the many can be further and better explicated and understood through what we're talking about in terms of Orthodox theology. So we have this principle that we get from Plato. It's an idea that's interesting that I think works. It's called metexis. And this is the idea of participation without loss of identity. And so that question that we saw earlier of the one and the many, one of the problems that might arise from that is, well, if we have a whole bunch of dogs and they're all sharing this property of dogness, but they're all unique, particular individuations or instances of dogs, what about other things that they might share? Like maybe all of these dogs, say in our class, are white. They all share the property of whiteness, quality of whiteness, but if we say that these dogs are white, we're not identifying whiteness with their essence, right? Because some dogs are brown, not all dogs are white, so whiteness cannot be something that's essential to being a dog, right? And that's what we would call an accidental property. Not accident in the sense of wrecking a car, but in Aristotle's categories, an accident, as opposed to the essence of the substance. And we'll get into that a little bit later. But for our purposes here, we're going to say that we're going to look at this and say that metexis is the great philosophical insight that we have that something can participate in a real metaphysical ontological sense. Dogs really do possess whiteness or brownness, or they really have this quality, and it's a real existing quality. That at the same time does not destroy their dogness, and it does not destroy color brown or white or red or whatever that the dog might have, it's not totally swallowed up in the being of the dog, right? There's the ability for two different properties or qualities to subsist in the same entity without losing their particularity, right? So we can say that a book is square, perhaps, or rectangular. It's solid. It's also numerically one, perhaps. And all of those properties that we say about the book are true, and yet none of those single characteristics sums up the totality of that book, right? So we can have multiplicity existing within a unity without either the multiplicity or the unity being enveloped or dissolved or destroyed or overridden. And why is that? Well, that's because in Orthodox theology, we don't believe that there's some preeminence to the one or some preeminence to the many or some dialectical tension. This is what, unfortunately, Greek philosophy and Platonism and the history of Western philosophy would do, was they would set up dialectics. And this is the idea that there's a real tension between unity and multiplicity. And you either fall on one of these sides or the other, right? Either unity is preeminent, primary, ontologically superior, or perhaps multiplicity is preeminent and superior to unity. And we're talking about as abstract, ultimate, high-level concepts here. Which one is it? Where do you fall? You say, well, what does this matter? Well, this affects everything. This might affect your view of the government, of nations, of states. Maybe unity in the government, right? Some sort of tyrannical dictatorship is what's preeminent, superior, and should be the case. Many tyrants have thought so, right? Or perhaps the many is superior. This would be democratists, democracy proponents, or anarchists. They would say, no, the multiplicity and anarchy and chaos is superior to the tyrannical unity of the great dictator. And so that would be a political example of the manifestation of dialectics. But dialectics is not just political. Political manifestation of dialectics is based on the metaphysical view of dialectics. And so in Orthodox theology, we don't believe that there's some preeminence to the one over the many, or some preeminence to the many over against the one. And this is because in our doctrine of the Trinity, we believe that the Father, the Son, and the Spirit all are co-equal in their essence, their divinity, their divine nature. But that unity that the Godhead shares, which is summed up in the Father as the cause of the Godhead, that unity is not superior in a metaphysical sense to the multiplicity in God. And in the same way, in the Logos, in his logoi, his many principles by which he is the architect of creation. And I'm not saying architect in a Masonic sense, I'm saying in an ex nihilo creator and giving matter form sense, right? He is both the unity and the multiplicity in creation. And that's according to Ephesians 1, Colossians 1, and 2. And that's our doctrine of the logoi. So there's no in Christ there's no preeminence to particularity in the many. There's no preeminence to the fact that, oh well, Jesus is more one than he is the many in the logoi. Right? So in both ways we would say that there's a balance. There's a balance between the one and the many. In God, in the Logos and the logoi, in the church, the way the church is governed.
Booking.com has stays for absolutely anyone. Imagine you're a musical-obsessed couple. You book a dazzling hotel in the Big Apple, 5 stars, with a balcony for your big solo. If Broadway buffs can find their perfect stay, anyone can. Booking.com, booking.yeah.
Right? There's not one super bishop of pope. Right? No god bishop. There is rather an equality because of the one and the many. And God is able to govern the church in this balance between the one and the many just as well as he's able to govern the universe and the many logoi and the one logos. So that leads us into with this principle of metexis, participation without loss of identity.
No.
To nature. Question of nature. What is nature or physis?
You son of a
This is
bitch.
the common essence that something shares, right? And this again relates to the question of the one and the many. So we can talk about in nature, or in the nature of what it is to be man. Right? Humans have a body and a soul, use, and that makes up human nature. God is different, although there's some, because we're made in God's image, there's some analogy there. God is different, though. God has a nature, but we don't know what God's nature is. And we say that all the biblical references to the darkness that surrounds the theophanic manifestations of God, the theophanies, you know, Moses says it was great darkness, right? That's because the oneness or the nature, the essence of God is unknown. We don't know. We'll never know God's essence because it's, even the seraphim have to close their eyes. We can never ever see into the divine essence. And this, to say that you can see the divine essence, is the heresy of Eunomius, and it's one of the errors of Aquinas, repeating the heresy of Eunomius. We do not see God's essence. We will see God face to face in the person of Christ, as Paul says in 2 Corinthians. And we see God in his energeia, or his operational energies. But before we get to that, let's understand again that the nature is what's common, the common essence to all humans. You and I, we share a human nature. That's our common essence that we have. Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, they share common divine nature, whatever it is. We don't know what it is, but it is beyond us, but it is revealed that God has a nature. And when we say that, we call that apophatic theology. That is theology of negation, or to not know. It doesn't mean that we can't make any positive statement about God being wise or just or whatever, but rather that we make a distinction between nature and person, hypostasis. We make that distinction because it's a revealed distinction. It's very important, and it's a crucial aspect of the theology of the first 1,000 years of the church in avoiding dialectics and in hammering out the proper Christology and human anthropology that we believe. So apophatic theology just simply means theology by negation, or when we say, for example, God is infinite. Well, humans don't have any direct conception of what infinity is. We know that it's not this, it's not that, it's not a created thing, it's not a fixed set of numbers, right? So it's a non, it's not that, not that, not that, and therefore it's by negation. That's what apophatic theology means, simply put. And even human nature, there's an aspect to man which is even apophatic. I mean, for example, Scripture says that only the Spirit knows the spirit of which is in a man, right? The Spirit of God alone knows the deepness of our spirits. So how then could I, as a human, know the depths of even another human being? So even amongst men and mankind, there's an apophatic aspect to human nature, right? And in nature in general, we saw before, how would you define dog nature? Well, I don't know, but we know that there is some kind of something that archetype or principle, logoi, that makes dogs dogs and not horses, and not chickens and not humans. Okay, so in the same way, there's something, man, and what's revealed is that we have a body, soul, use, and we're made in the image of God, and that's what makes man much like God, being made in his image. And that Greek word for being made in the image is icon. This is why iconology and iconography and icons play such an important role. It's because we read in Scripture in Hebrews that the Logos is the icon of the Father. It's the direct image of the Father's hypostasis.
That was a complete waste.
Word that is used in Hebrews, there at the beginning, Hebrews 1. He's the direct image of the hypostasis of the Father. And what is this? This is a particular subject, right, or person. And this is very important because we have a doctrine of the human person, theology and anthropology of the human person. Most philosophers
That should cost you money. Why though? Why is it
all other philosophies, person is intellect or human nature or soul or whatever. And now in our point, it's called so particular human nature is always going to be instantiated in a particular person. This is a personal, specific subject. Focus of action. I am the person, J. Hypostasis, J. You are the person, Bill Cosby or whoever you are. And so this is going to lead us to another important term that we have to understand. This is going to help us to understand the incarnation. This is what the fathers will use. In hypostasis. And while this may sound a little obtuse, don't worry, it's not a big deal. All it is that anytime that nature, human nature, exists in reality, in Ray, actually, all instances of human nature are going to be of a specific hypostasis, that's particular, and that's all that means, in hypostasis. So you're never going to find human nature in the abstract. It's always instantiated, right? It's universal, it's common amongst all humans. It is their real essence, the common essence that we all share. But it's always and only instantiated in a certain mode, which we call in hypostasis, that is in the human form. Now, so what is a hypostasis? Well, it's just a particular subject, Peter and Paul. And what do Peter and Paul share in common? Human nature. What do the Father and the Son and the Spirit share in common? Divine nature, but they are particular, singular hypostases. Right. Now, the way that we know beings is through the communication of their person, their hypostases, through their actions, operations, speech, messages, letters, whatever. And this is what we mean by energeia, energies. Right? So this is action operation that is proper to.
Can you save money and still get reliable phone service? With Telomobile, the answer is yes. In an era of overpriced everything, Telomobile comes with an excellent phone service that actually has the best prices. Super customizable phone plan options that start at just $5 a month can go up to only $25. And the best part, you're free to tailor your plan to fit your needs and budget. Telomobile, phone plans just the way you like it. Visit Tello.com to discover more.
Nature. And we say that because energies are proper to the nature that has that operation. So, for example, God's energies or operations are not the same as man's. There might be some parallel or carryover or analogy, but the way that the divine nature operates is not the same as what you and I. So when we speak of humans having wisdom, this is not wisdom in a univocal sense, right? So univocal meaning here, the same sense, right? So I don't have God wisdom in the same sense that God has wisdom, because God is infinitely beyond us, right? Now we do as humans have the ability to participate in God's wisdom, but God's wisdom is not the same as God's nature. God's wisdom is an energy of the divine nature. And there is a difference between essence and energy. It is a real distinction. Right? Just as if I operate in the world to build a house, the actions that I use to build a house are not the same thing as my human nature. They're also not the same thing as the person J. Right? Building a house is an action proper to human nature, as is living or thinking or communicating or speaking or anything. But they're not the same thing as me, obviously. Right? So in the same way, God's creation, the created world, or the act of creating the world, not the same thing as his nature. They're distinct. The Father is not the same as the created world, right? And the act of creating was at a specific point. Now, God can continue to create, of course, and He can create in the future. But this is why we believe there's a distinction between the essence of a thing and the thing's operation or energy. Now, those energies are proper to the nature, right? So if I speak, or if I exemplify wisdom or knowledge, hopefully I am, then that wisdom or knowledge is proper to me as a human person in human exemplifying the energy of human nature. If God does something, then it is proper to the divine nature. Right? So the energies of God are proper to His nature. The energies of man are proper to human nature. And what we believe in theology is that metexis, participation without loss of identity, is how we participate in the energies of God. And that's what we will call theosis, deification. It is the participation of human nature, human persons in the divine energy without the loss of human identity or human nature or submersion into the divine essence. We have nothing to do with the divine essence in the sense of knowing it, perceiving it directly. Now, the divine operations or energies, they proceed from the divine nature, and that they're proper to Him as a divine being. But we never see this or know this. All we know is the direct, active energy of God. And that is the crucial distinctions in theological terms that I think have to be understood to understand our theology. Now, for example, energeia is used several times in the New Testament. It's used 3 times in Ephesians, Colossians, 2 Thessalonians. Paul speaks of the operations of the Spirit in Corinthians. It's all the Greek word, energeia. And the operations of the Spirit are distinct from the Spirit. So that's why we would say these kinds of things, right? So Paul, when he says in Ephesians 1:19 in the Greek that we know the mighty working of His power, the effectual working of His power in Ephesians 3:7, Ephesians 4:16. That's energeia. Now, His, that refers to God, divine person, Father. His power, energeia. Hypostasis, His power. So, we see that these are, again, Greek terms used in the New Testament, many of them. Nous is used in the New Testament. Hypostasis is used in the New Testament. Phusis is used in the New Testament. Metexis, I'm not aware of that being in the New Testament, but it's still just a useful concept. Energeia. Peter says we participate in God. Jesus says that in John 17, that you share in the immortality and the life that He has. And that's that participation in the divine energy. When Jesus is on Mount Tabor, the light is coming out of Him. With us, the divine energies. So, that, I think, is a good discussion of some of these basic terms. We can see all those. I know it's getting kind of messy. We're going to clean that board off and move on to the next section. Well, we're coming close to an hour here, so I want to thank you for listening. And as I said before, this is of course, the free hour. The second hour is, of course, available to subscribers of Jay's Analysis. $4.95 a month or $60 a year. And we're going to get into some more St. John's usages of Aristotelian categories here in a moment. We're going to get into substance and accidents and what holomorphism is and the 4 causes and all this as we look at the usages of Aristotle and the good and the bad there as well. And we're going to see how this also applies to theology and anthropology. And then, as I said, next time we will move on to Disputations with Pyrrhus by St. Maximus and look at how the hinge upon the theology and anthropology there is what swings us in any direction towards good theology and philosophy or error and heresy and ultimately the destruction of our worldview. So that's going to be coming up in the next second hour. So be sure and subscribe if you haven't heard that. Also, as I said, you can check out my book, Esoteric Hollywood, Sex, Cult, and Symbols in Film, which is all complete on my end. All the sidebars are complete. It's now still ready for pre-order and will be out in the next month or two. So thank you for listening. Check out jaysanalysis.com. And if you like philosophy, if you like this, tell your friends and tell them to sign up, subscribe.
Your number 2 burns the hair in my nose, but we fought hand in paw. Now your poop don't stink at all.
Instantly neutralize poop stink with Poop Fighter from World's Best Cat Litter.
All right, this morning, just after 8 a.m., the Browns announced a trade, and they have got some reinforcements on the offensive line. According to Ian Rappaport, who broke the news, the Texans and Browns agreed to terms on a trade that will send starting right tackle Titus Howard to Cleveland in exchange for a 5th-round pick. The Browns, obviously, some much-needed offensive line help. Plus, they extended Howard on a new 3-year, $63 million extension. He was entering the final year of his contract, so we're waiting on the details to see if that is just new money on this year plus 2 more years, or if it's 3 years beyond. We'll get those details in a second, but G. Bush, your initial reaction to the Browns acquiring a starting caliber offensive lineman in Titus Howard?
This is what I'm talking about. Project Stockpile has begun. You get a guy who...
We got one.
We
right?
got one.
We got one.
You got to start somewhere.
Got to start somewhere.
Got to start somewhere. Listen, he's a starting caliber tackle. He's played some guard. You know, he's a starter for the Texans. You know, you take a look at what he's able to do. He has some versatility there. But if you're going to get a starting caliber tackle who is playing for a team that was in the playoffs, and you get it for a 5th-round pick, I love it, because now, you know, you can look at it, and we talked about not being able to count on DeJuan Jones. We talked about needing gaps and phases all up and down the line of scrimmage. Now, you know, has Joe Bitonio retired yet?
No.
Okay. So, you know.
But do we think he's leaning one way or the other? To me, I feel like he's leaning towards retiring.
I mean, I thought it was a foregone conclusion.
Yeah, that's why I say
the fact
he's
that he
leaning
even
that way.
extended it out tells me there's at least a chance, but I would still tend to lean toward retiring.
Well, you know, you take a look at this. This is a very, very, very nice move. Now, you need some other things to go along with it, but you take a look at the tackle position, and we looked at the free agent tackle group. You know, there's a tackle available from the Packers, but I mean, he's average. I mean, he actually, to be truthful, when it comes to the run blocking, he's below average. But this is a nice move because now it frees up your flexibility. And I've been talking to my dad and my brother. They're big Buckeye fans all weekend. They've been entrenched in the Buckeye, the Buckeye lore. Oh boy, listen.
Out of one and into the other.
They about put. I said, bro, it's too late to buy the Ohio State Arvell Reese and what's the name, Styles jerseys now. They're done. Yeah. They're like, nah. We need to figure out a way to get up there. There's a whole lot of people that have been enamored by some of those defensive players. Now, I told them, look, it all depends on what they do in free agency. I didn't think it was going to be some tackles available in free agency that could be starting level tackles that should be worth that money. But when you can go out and make a trade for a 5th-round pick and you got a guy that I think you can plug in and start, man, you know, you probably asked me what the grade is on a poll on the website in the chat. I got it a B+. I like it a lot. You know, they're going to need some other things. They're going to figure out what's going on with the other guard position. But in terms of the risk reward and what he's been able to do for the compensation given up, I'll take it.
It's a flyer, 5th-round pick. I mean, we've got some draft capital.
Yeah.
So I think it's, you know, I don't think I would order your playoff tickets, but I do think that it's a move that they have to make because they've got nobody on the offensive line. Nobody. So if you can get a guy for a 5th-round pick that you know can play in the NFL, that seems to me like it's a pretty good wash. I'm a little concerned why Houston would let him go. I imagine they just have 1 or 2 spots to fill on their offensive line. Mike, do you have info on that?
Yeah, Aaron Wilson, who covers the Texans, said that he's entering the final year of his deal. They drafted a replacement right tackle last year in the draft, and they need to clear some cap space to give extensions to Will Anderson and some of the other guys coming up. So it was less of a performance thing,
the good answer.
more of a money.
Yeah, that's the good answer. And because I knew he had 1 year left, I figured that was it. Now, obviously, if he was a guy that they wanted to make sure they kept, they would extend him. But they didn't. And, you know, I think he's going to probably start for us. Who else we're going to play? I'd be lying if I said I know anything about him as a player. I don't. Just other than looking at his grades, which seems to me, Mike, would you say he is...
Machine learning is advancing, but businesses wonder if some machines can keep up.
Let's welcome our new coworker, Jeff.
Copier has a great idea.
Wonder if it's the same idea as yesterday.
It's a performance issue, really. I know people push your buttons, but you still have to deliver.
Anything can change the world of work. ADP Assist is AI, informed by workplace data, and designed for the next anything.
Is it time to say yep to Vyepti? Vyepti is an IV infusion that helps prevent migraine attacks. Chronic migraine patients saw 23 fewer migraine days on average per treatment. And it's just 4 30-minute IV treatments a year. Don't take if allergic to Vyepti. Allergic reactions, high blood pressure, and Raynaud's, which causes numb or painful fingers or toes, can happen. Get help right away for rash, swelling of the face, lips, tongue, or throat, or trouble breathing, hives, and facial redness. Common side effects are stuffy nose, scratchy throat, and allergic reactions. Ask your doctor about Vyepti.
Middle of the pack overall.
Yeah, he's middle of the pack, good pass block.
But he's got a really good pass blocker.
Yeah, and he's a converted tight end. He was a tight end in college.
I like that. That's athleticism. And I like the fact that you can plug and play him in any spot except for left tackle. That seems to be the place that he hasn't played. So I like the versatility. I like that we picked up a starter for a 5th-round draft pick. If you can trade a 5th-round draft pick for a known starter, Jay, I think that's a pretty good deal.
I'd rather have a veteran tackle than a rookie in the 5th round. You know what I'm saying? If you're going to burn a 5th round pick on...
Hell, look what happened to our 1st-round guy.
Yeah.
Like, there's no guarantees.
Every time the Browns trade with the Texans, I go...
I know. We've built an empire for them down there.
Trade with Jacksonville all you want. Like, they do great with Jacksonville.
Yeah, that's true.
Houston, it doesn't seem to work out so great. But, I mean, listen, you had to do something. I don't think you can count on DeJuan for a whole year. I'm most curious about what this does for the draft and how you approach the draft with that 6th pick now, because I don't think you're drafting a right tackle.
Let me tell you this.
No, but they need multiple guys on the front.
We were going to get into this because McNuggets talked about the offensive line.
Yeah, we definitely are.
I've been in the lab looking at these tackles, and
good ones.
You know what? I like them, but I definitely have more reservations about him being a tackle now than I did a day ago.
Why?
Or a couple of days ago.
Because the combine?
No, just more in depth in his film work. I just think his lateral mobility as a tackle is going to be tough. I think he's going to have problems dealing with speed rushers. He has good power. He has good functional strength, but he plays a high a lot. And I just think he gets pulled. I think his balance isn't all the way there. I do think his body type screams, let me play guard, because he can get away with that inside, right? So, I have my...
You're not going to take a guard that high, though.
It's tough.
Yeah, he's not going to do it.
Taking a guard at 6 is tough. So, this, to me, and I'll just say this about Andrew Bear and the Cleveland Browns. Let me be honest with you. They can do a number of things. I don't know what the heck they're going to do. Like
trading down is an option,
they
isn't
can
it?
trade back. They could take they could trade back. But, I mean, maybe one of these defenders that they may fall in love with. I learned my lesson last year from Mason Graham. They said receiver, offensive line. Well, they took the offensive lineman and right tackle. I don't know who they got to pencil in their left tackle, but, you take a look at free agencies coming along. But, yeah, I think this really takes tackle off the board at 6.
Yeah, that feels like it does.
Well, I actually disagree. We're going to get to that in a sec. But one other thing with this before we pivot to the combine and the stuff you're going to get into, G. Titus Howard last year played right tackle, right guard, and left guard. If you look at his career snaps, he's played 3,515 snaps at right tackle and 1,800 snaps at left guard, and then a couple sprinkled in at left tackle and right guard. Never played a snap at center.
Right.
It does give you a little versatility that if DeJuan Jones comes back and is healthy, it gives you the flexibility to put your best 5 offensive linemen on the field at once, which the Browns need because they don't even have 5 offensive linemen under contract right now. So when you build out your offensive line, whether Titus is penciled in as your right tackle, He's only played 200 snaps in his entire career and hasn't played left tackle since 2021. So probably not a guy you put at left tackle, but at least
it sounds like that's
the
not
fact
an
that he's
option.
played guard and he's played more snaps at left guard significantly than any other position besides right tackle. You have the versatility to kind of plug in place to get your 5 best offensive linemen out there, regardless of the orientation of the line.
It just feels to me that because there are so many holes on the line, and we know we need wide receivers, that draft capital is going to be a real thing. If you can trade down and pick up an extra pick, I think it's a smart move. And I know typically I don't like that, and it seems like that's been a pattern for the Browns.
It is a pattern.
And in the past, I've not loved it every time they've done it, but they have done it sometimes where it works.
There's a difference in philosophy and execution. In the philosophy, I agree with the philosophy.
Yeah, but now you got to make good on the picks.
You got to pick the right guys.
That's exactly right.
And they did last year.
They did.
For the most part, they had a great draft. So I love what they did last year. I would not be opposed if they trade down again from 6. I mean, it's all about value. And it depends on what the other team's coming up to get. But I mean, we talked about this like last year. Eric DeCosta was talking about it, the Ravens GM, who basically said the draft is a crapshoot, and I want as many darts as possible, and it doesn't matter where they're at.
Yeah.
Just give me the darts.
I agree. I don't really want them 6th or 7th round.
Well, sure.
Because at that point, those are guys you may be able to sign as free agents. But if you can get 5th and above, really 4th and above, I love that.
Yeah.
Especially when you hit on last year's draft. Andrew Berry has to be feeling a little more confident going into this year's draft than he has ever before. And again, we've talked about why they had success in the draft last year. Was DePodesta less a part of it than he had been in years before, and he saw the writing on the wall for him, and that's why he left? It's a theory. I don't know if it's true or not, but I can't explain why Berry had been well below average in all of his drafts prior to last year, and last year he hit it out of the park.
Yeah, I think if you're a guy who is a best available guy on the board, that's your philosophy. You just want the best players available. This move sets up a little better that you can possibly see a wide variety of names that may be in play for the Cleveland Browns, especially given the fact that if you get if you get a receiver in free agency or you make another trade and shore up another position on offensive line, I think that'll tell us exactly what their thought process is on the draft. For me, at the top of the draft for the offensive lineman, there's 3 up there, three or 4 in there, but then there's a drop. And when you get to the second day type guys, so if they feel like okay, there's a high drop, there's a drop considerably, maybe they go with another position. We haven't even talked about the infamous how fast does Carnell Tate run?
Oh, we're getting
I think that was shocking on the wrong end.
Right.
And then Styles was shocking on the other end.
Yeah. So
some of those 40 times, I felt like I was watching a track meet.
I have a theory on that. One other thing real quick before we get to the combine. The Texans have just traded a second offensive lineman today. They've traded Juice, Scruggs, and a 4th round pick to the Lions for David Montgomery. Last week we looked up the offensive line rankings just based off of PFF. It's just one calculation. They had the Texans as the 27th best offensive line in football last year, and they've now traded 2 starters off that line. So I don't know what that says, but just want to throw it out there as Titus Howard is not the only offensive lineman they have traded today.
The next level of Galaxy is here. Tune in to Galaxy Live for an exclusive sneak peek and offers you can't get anywhere else.
Not everyone's life runs in straight lines. At Sophia, we get that. Our flexible, affordable, self-paced college-level courses help thousands of people just like you complete their degrees for only $99 a month.
Combine topics to dive into, but G, you started with the offensive lineman at the combine, and I want to dive in on that first, because I kind of have a differing opinion to what you said on the fact that you think tackle is out of play now for the Browns. Titus Howard has played right tackle, he's played right guard. There is only one guy, really 2, but one guy at number 6 that is a traditional, unquestioned, undeniable left tackle. If you look at the top tackles on the board, Spencer Fano is a right tackle. Caleb Lomu from Utah, he has played left tackle, but is not projected to go anywhere near the top 10. Caden Proctor played left tackle, not necessarily a guy considered that high for the Browns. Maui Oga, right tackle, guard, you can make the decision. And then the guy you see next, Monroe Freeling from Georgia, has only played left tackle, is a traditional left tackle. If you look at his RAS score, and Steve, you want to take tackle in full, he ranked out as the just flat out disgustingly good in terms of the RAS score, the relative athletic score. He's the third highest out of 1,500 graded tackles they've ever had at the combine. Fits all the physical makeups, the height, the size, the weight, the arm length, etc., etc. I think it takes him out of the play for right tackle. I certainly think they're still in play for a left tackle. But G, I'll let you start on this one again because you mentioned Malioga a second ago. He measured in at pure tackle size.
Well, that was
Freeling measured in at gigantic tackle size. You think because of this trade they're more off the board than before, or do you still think they could be in play for the Browns as they look to continue to fill out the offense?
No, I think Freeling is definitely going to be a late first round pick. I think he was borderline to me, but I think that when you look at Proctor, I think now that there's people that would likely have him above Proctor at tackle. When you take a look at what he was able to do, 6'7", long arms, ran tremendously well. He's one of the best pass blockers. The problem is he's not a great, he's not going to deliver a lot of movement up front. But when you look at Fano and when you look at this young man, there's a difference between, you look at Fano and the thing that gets me with him is he's slight of build in his lower body. Like they got him listed at about 310, but he just looks like he looks like when I'm watching him play, he's 285. Now he is aggressive when it comes to him coming off the football, but sometimes he's over aggressive a little bit, and there are times where he can get overextended a little bit. But the problem is with Fano as well, he doesn't get much movement. He's more of a position blocker where he's just going to look to get on the outside of you and just stay in this gap. He's not going to be a guy that you look at, hey, it's 4th and 1, let's run behind him and get 2 yards. That's not what's going to happen. He's more of a position blocker. So to me, in my opinion, it's not a great tackle class. But when you look at this guy, when you look at Freeling, I think he's moved himself in a position because he is a very good pass blocker, because he does do a really good job, and he plays in the SEC, and he's gone against some of the elite pass rushers. I do believe that he's moved himself to the late first round. And then the guard, I think there's a chance a guard does go. The guard from Penn State, what is Olavioga? What is his name? How you pronounce his name?
Malioga?
No. The kid, the Penn State guard, starts with
Olu.
Yeah,
I'm just calling him Olu.
Oh, we go Olu, right? Y'all got to come out and give us these pronunciations earlier, bro. I don't know, this is crazy, but
I think there's one on the NFL website.
Yeah, I got to check that out.
NFL website has one for the draft prospect.
I think he's a guard. I think he's the best guard by far, and I actually think that he'll go in the first round. But McNuggets, if they do find a guy that they like, I like the Dunker kid from Iowa. He's not much of an athlete.
Did you see his 40?
Yeah, he was running. Did you see his hair?
Yeah, well, I saw somebody on social media put his 40 with Freebird and said these two were just meant to go together. Right. Because when you hear, and it's in slow motion, but when you hear Freebird with his hair flying and the look on his face, you're like, that's not wrong.
Hey, I like him a lot. He's a baller. I like him at guard, but yeah, I think I don't know if I like anybody that high in the first part of this draft, but I think Freeling will definitely go first round.
This is my to-do list, and the only thing I think I'll be able to get done this weekend is build this raised bed. You can go to bootstrapfarmer.com, type in raised beds, pick a color, get it delivered to your door, build it in less than 10 minutes, and then plant your garden. Or you can design the plans, go to the hardware store, deal with traffic, load the lumber in the cart, go through the checkout process, unload the cart into the truck, drive home,
Wipe your shitty butt.
I'm leery of the workout warriors, the guys.
We talked about that Friday, yeah.
And you guys remember Vernon Golston, right?
Yeah, we mentioned him.
He was a guy that everybody said, oh, he'll tear it up at the next level. He was supposed to tear it up here, right? He was supposed to be. He was like a top 5 pick. Oh my God, when you looked at him, it was like he's not a human being.
Yeah.
He came out of a laboratory. I think it was the 6th pick.
I covered him at Ohio State. That's why I was covering him.
Yes, and I was very familiar with him from Ohio State as well. And And then something happened, man. He literally might have invented looks like Tarzan plays like Jane, because didn't take him long. And there's been other guys like that. You guys probably won't remember, but Tony Mandrich is a guy. Mandrich was an absolute can't miss, humongous human being that when you watched him do all of his physical drills, you said, oh, this guy will be the gold standard for years in the NFL. And he didn't make it. And there are a lot of other examples like
there
that.
There are a few that have panned out, though.
What's that?
There are a few that have looked like
listen, at that position, I think the hit rate is much higher at that position than maybe any other position.
At tackle?
Well, just because...
Busted tackles can play guard, usually.
Yes, you can, if you're a bust...
Get something out of them.
Yes, there's somewhere you can move them and get some value out of them. And also, they usually have to raise to such a level of greatness. Like, Joe Thomas.
Yeah.
You're not taking Joe Thomas in the top 3 unless you absolutely know.
Yeah,
and so I think the bust rate at that position, that high, is actually fairly low. It might be the lowest amongst all positions. And that's subjective too, because what's a bust? But to your point, and this is where I was going too, if you bust out at tackle, we can move you. Maybe you're a right tackle, maybe you're a guard. So there's flexibilities and there's layers that you can fall down and still have a long, productive, successful career. So I don't know what I'm looking for to the extent that you do when I look at tape. I watch these tapes. To me, you know what? We're seeing highlights. They all look great. I don't want to see the highlights. Give me 20 random plays.
The lowlights.
Give me 20 random plays, and maybe he'll look great, and maybe he won't. But to me, when I'm on YouTube and I'm searching for X players' highlights, I'm like, I'll draft that guy this second. And I think that's what the Browns are doing too.
You look at the next one and go, give me him too.
Yes.
Give me him too.
Because they're highlights.
Right.
So give me their random plays. Give me their, there are analytics, the grade rates and all of that. But be wary rather of the workout warriors and the guys that just make your eyes fall out of your head, but then the tape doesn't always follow through.
Jason, I'd be interested to talk to their scouting department in the front office to see what their philosophy is on offensive linemen. Do they have it where, do they believe that most of these guys, if you coach them up, they can be serviceable? Or do they really believe that there's only a couple of really top-notch tackles, and if you find one of them, you just take them? But other than that, because I watch these guys, they're tackles from Division II schools. You watch these great teams, and you turn the tape on, or you watch the TV, and it's Monday Night Football, and they're like, where he come from? Oh, he went to Saginaw State. Right. The left tackle is starting. He went from Purdue. I'm like, what?
In the old days, you could get the Jackson States, you could get the Walter Paytons and Jerry Rices, but here's where I'm leery of that today. You could transfer. Why didn't you leave?
Yeah.
Like in the old days, you'd have to sit out a year. Guys weren't willing to do that. And so then, it was the same thing with Steve McNair. They're like, well, I don't know. What kind of competition does Alcorn State really face? I don't know. Joe Flacco experienced that. And so in the old days, I felt there was a calculus to drafting a guy that was one of the smaller divisions. Because look, a lot of times guys at 18 can come out in their tweeners, and then they blossom, and they grow, and they dominate at North Dakota State because it was too difficult to transfer. But today, I'm looking at all of those really small schools and said, well, wait a minute, why were you still there?
Yeah.
You should have been offered millions if it was there. You should have been offered millions to go to a Power 5.
That's a fair, I think that's a fair point. I also think we're so early into this still of NIL that I think teams are still, these colleges are still trying to figure out what do we need, what do we want, who do we get. So there's always going to be guys who fall through the cracks, no matter what. But, and I mean, we can take this, I don't want to get too far off track, but that's what makes recruiting so difficult now. There are no seats at the table for freshmen. You have to be special to get a shot at Ohio State as a freshman now.
Yep.
Because why would Ohio State take a freshman? why would they burn a spot on a freshman when you can
go get a known commodity?
Go get a transfer.
And OU, I knew it was a problem. OU had like 20-some transfers. And those, a lot of these freshmen, I would look at them like, oh man, usually you don't find them getting a bunch of the guys that's all state or guys that are going to be all American. Like, wow, this guy from this recruiting site says this dude is the top 10 guy in this position. Well, there's not enough places to go around at the table now. Everything's upperclassmen.
Yeah, it's really changed.
So Cass Merrick from OU, he went to Ohio State, ran in the combine. He got invited to the combine. He went from OU to Ohio State. And I'm like, wow, like it's crazy that it happens like that. But we'll look at it like this: there's a safety from Toledo that's going to get taken high. There was this corner that was taken from Toledo a couple years ago, and obviously the poster child is Harold Fanning Jr.
Sure,
like shoot,
he could have left. He could have left after his junior year and gone anywhere.
He could have went, but he ended up staying. I'm glad we stayed because we found him. But yeah, I think now I'd love to be a fly on the wall to see what that board looks like on offensive linemen because I think it's really jumbled together. I don't see anybody really separating themselves too much. So
to your earlier point, yeah, if you've got a special guy at the top table, but I think for the most part, a lot of these guys can be coached up to be.
Scribe is how you stop explaining the same thing over and over at work. Watch this. It'll change your life. Raise your hand if you've told your boss how to do the same thing more than once. Not so. That's why there's Scribe. Go to scribehow.com. Click Capture, do the task once, and Scribe will create a step-by-step guide you can share automatically. You ever watch someone through a giant process and know they'll forget half of it? Scribe puts everything they need to know. Instructions, pictures, videos, all on one page. So the next time they ask, you can just send the link. I know what you're thinking. They still click the wrong thing half the time. Check this out. Scribe will literally guide them through it click by click. Warning. They're going to think you're a genius and ask you how you did it. Just say Scribe. Scribe instantly turns any workflow into a step-by-step guide, so you never have to explain it again. Go to scribehow.com and try it for free. You don't even need a credit card.
This is what would happen to your body if you ate mood sleep gummies every day. Day one, you take your first gummy at bedtime, maybe expecting disappointment. But 20 minutes later, your racing thoughts slow down, and you're falling asleep without tossing and turning for hours. It's like finding a dimmer switch for your brain. Day two, you sleep through the night. No 3 a.m. wake-ups, no staring at the ceiling, and you actually wake up refreshed instead of like you've been hit by a truck. Day five, your brain fog lifts and your mind clears. Your razor-sharp focus is back. You're actually finishing tasks without that mental fatigue dragging you down. Day seven, you have more energy than you've ever had. Real energy. Not
You're
the
a
jittery
victim of my bad aim.
You're jumping off the bed and your body feels alive again. Day 14, family and friends start asking what changed. You're different, sharper, more present, more like yourself. Your good mood and patience is back. Day 30, you're looking in the mirror and see the transformation. You see someone who's thriving, clear skin, bright eyes, genuine energy. The person you used to be before sleep became a nightly battle. These are the results that make mood sleep gummies different from any other sleep solution. Delta 9 combined with plus ashwagandha, reishi, L-theanine, magnesium, and no melatonin. Ingredients that actually complement each other. While other products give you one ingredient hoping for the best, this gives you a complete system. Thousands of people have found relief with these, bettering their lives and relationships. Healthcare providers are noticing when their patients' stress markers improve. Because good sleep isn't just rest. It's the foundation everything in your life is built on. These aren't just gummies. They're the bridge back to feeling like your best self. Fast-acting, non-habit forming, and made right here in the USA with third-party testing. You deserve to wake up feeling restored and ready. So, don't wait. Get 15% off when you subscribe. Plus, you have 100 full days to try and test them. That's over 3 months to discover what thousands already know. Day 31 starts tonight. The question is, when will yours?
Especially at that position, right? Like that position is a technical position. Yeah. It's a lot about the coaching that you've been given to this point. If they didn't feel they were getting great coaching at that position in college, and coaches do have egos. Their Father Flanagan's, wow, I've turned him into a player. Some they can, some they can't.
I'm slowly, man, it was messed up. I hate to admit it. This is crazy. I would have talked about 17 people that even called me watching these drafts. And I don't know if Jay Crawford is out here texting these people on an independent team, but they sound a lot like him. They keep saying the pendulum is swung. Right now, defense is the hot thing.
No, it has.
Right now, defense.
What's going on here, boys?
Is back in vogue. You might not stop everybody down, but when you talk about the defensive line and how the athletes there, the safeties that are now playing more like corners, locking people up, right? The linebackers are running 4-4. Like the defense.
Some of the defensive guys' times over the weekend were unbelievable.
Did you guys see the? Maybe it was in our group chat. Maybe that's where I saw it. So I guess that you would have. All the Ohio State receivers and then Sonny Styles and like Sonny was faster than all of us.
Oh, yeah.
Was that in our chat? Is that where I saw it?
I don't think so. I saw it somewhere else, and I didn't read everything.
Well, Sonny Styles, his brother, Lorenzo Styles, ran even faster than Sonny did.
He were like a 4.32.
Well, look, his dad was a great player at Ohio State.
I remember him.
He wasn't a great player in the NFL.
Greg
But
Powell.
did win a Super Bowl.
Greg Powell
and Lorenzo Styles. I covered those guys back in the day.
Back in the day.
Silver bullets. That was a hell of a defense. That had Sean Springs. That had Mike Vrabel.
Fickle.
Finkus. That was a hell of Katzenmoyer.
What is that? 90?
96 maybe?
Katzenmoyer would have been.
Hey.
Katzenmoyer, I think Katzenmoyer was a freshman when Vrabel was a senior. Don't quote me on that. I just remember when I covered Andy Katzenmoyer in high school. I think he was Westerville South or North.
South.
And boys, I am not exaggerating. This is going to sound like a gas. I covered a lot of high school football because I worked 5 years in Columbus, 5 years in Tampa, and we went big on high school football coverage. I have never seen a high school running back better than Andy Katzenmoyer. And it was funny to watch because he came through the line and he looked like an oak tree. And he ran up and down, but he was just, kids were falling off of him like it was unbelievable.
That was the heyday. That was the heyday of high school football. Like I was, in the 90s, that put me like 9 or 10, but these dudes is household names. They had him and John Carter came through in Columbus.
Same time.
And I was like, this
same time.
Well, if you guys want to watch, go
Same
watch
time.
Andy Katzenmoyer. His freshman year at Ohio State.
He could have played in the NFL. I had guys tell me that were NFL players at the time. He'd be a Pro Bowl linebacker in the NFL right now.
Big Cat was so crazy. Like, this dude was running down. I remember who he hit.
Corby Jones. Corby Jones of Missouri. I was at the game. You know what my stand-up was after the game? In the divot that he left in the field. If you want to YouTube this, go YouTube it. Andy Katzenmoyer, Corby Jones, Missouri. He hit him so hard, he left a crater in the football field. It was like this deep. I stood on it for my stand-up at the end of the game. It was unbelievable.
He hit him on the hash and ended up on the sideline. I said, you knocked him from the hash to the sideline. Bro, he was...
The Missouri fans. Now, and Missouri had a good team that year, by the way. Corby Jones was a good player.
Then they had...
But the Missouri fans, it kind of went from, that, like when a home team gets dunked on, you're like, I should be cheering that, but I cannot help but cheer that. That's what the mood was in the stadium after that hit, because it was just like, oh, no one had ever seen anything like it, so they're like, yeah, we got to applaud that.
Was that at Missouri? Was that on the
road? It was at Missouri.
I remember they had the home and home with Missouri.
Yeah.
It was one of them teams you just didn't never see on TV like that. Back then, you wasn't getting no other Midwest teams and that. Like, so when Ohio State, I remember they played a home and home. I think it was at the Bowl when they played Texas A&M, because they had that and win. I think playing for Texas A&M.
That was a bowl game.
It was a major. They had a nice little scat running back. That might have been a bowl game.
I think it was.
That might have been a bowl game.
I don't think they've ever been down there, and I don't remember.
It was a Sugar Bowl, matter of fact.
Yeah.
It was a Sugar Bowl.
As you can kind of see around the restaurant, tons of art. We relate that to the food. Restaurant stores helped me focus more on creativity and cooking than operations and logistics. Walking into a fully stocked kitchen with all the right tools and accessories allows me to do the fun and creative things that I love to do. We want someone to leave feeling something. That to me is the win.
the way back home.
All right, alternate plan. I was trying to spare you, but my undergarments are inside.
Yep.
Well, let's talk about an Ohio State player next. Excuse me, guys. Cardell Tate's been somebody who has been in conversation for the 6th pick with Cleveland, as Jay shows off some highlights that unfortunately we cannot show here on UCSS. The 40 times for the receivers were as fast as they've ever been. On average this year, the average 40-yard dash for a receiver was a 4.44. That's the fastest in the history of the combine since they started tracking this in 2003. The fastest receiver times you can see on your screen there. Brennan Thompson, Mississippi State, ran a 4.26. Xavier Thomas from LSU ran a 4.28. Deion Burks from Oklahoma ran a 4.3. Jeff Caldwell from Cincinnati, a 4.31. Bryce Lance, the younger brother of Trey Lance, ran a 4.34. Then you see Cardell Tate did not rank anywhere near the top. He ran a official 4.53 40-yard dash. Jason, I know it's, as some people like to call it, the underwear Olympics, but that was a slower time than expected for Cardell Tate, and certainly not near the top of the receiver speed list. Does that take him out of play for the Browns at number 6, or should we just look at the tape and ignore a silly 40-yard?
Yeah, it better not. It better not take him out of the conversation. Honestly, the play, I forget what game it was, when he had the alligator arm.
Oh,
that was a bigger concern for me than whatever.
I agree with you, yeah.
Come on,
he'll
chunky
run
butt.
against Columbus. I'm sure he'll put up a better time than that.
And it'll be faster.
Yeah, but I mean, just for me, it's always the tape for me. And we talked about last week, Ohio State receivers are like FANG stocks. That's Facebook, Apple, Netflix, Google. Those guys rarely bust. So if you can get an Ohio State receiver at the top of the draft, chances are it's going to turn out well for you. So is it concerning? I wouldn't go so far as to say concerning.
Does their blind spot at that position factor into it at all? And I ask that because if you've taken a lot of wide receivers and they've done well, then you have a pretty high confidence level of pulling that off.
Yeah.
But because they've had such a blind spot in this regime at wide receivers, do you think that changes the calculus at all?
How would it change it?
Well, that there is a question on this. Like, if he'd run a 4.4, then I don't think there's any concerns at all. But now there's a red flag on the kid. And I'm just wondering if Andrew Berry has the onions to pull trig on this kid after there's already a concern.
What if he goes to Columbus and runs a 4.4?
That's different.
Yeah.
And I think he will be faster. I just don't think he'll be that much faster.
Yeah. What would he have to? What was he? 4.5.
4.53, and he ran it again and was exactly the same 4.53.
Yeah.
So
so what's he have to run for you to feel comfortable?
Low 4.4s. Man, if he come out there and run a 4.47, thumbs up.
Yeah.
I mean, that's 6/10.
It's
faster, but
I think
6/100s. I'm sorry.
But this thing you always get messed up. First of all, yes, I think it.
Don't get me wrong. I like him.
No,
I like him.
It is.
Don't know if I like him at 6.
It is. It is something to be said about the fact that the Browns, have not done a good job. If one of my main criticisms of Andrew Berry is I hate his receiving. I hate his receiver profile. I hate it.
It's an F. It's an F minus.
I don't like the smallish receivers that really can't hold on to the football.
Right.
Like I just don't. That's not my MO. So
I mean, David Bell, Anthony Schwartz. There's others I'm missing. There's another one that I.
What's the dude from Louisville? They just got him.
Yeah, like his hit rate is. Hey, Mike, just for a little exercise, I'm curious about this. Can you call up the top 5 wide receiver times from the combine in 22? And I only ask that as an exercise because I'm curious. Anecdotally, in my mind, it's not the burners that have great success in the NFL. Not to say that these guys aren't fast, they are. But I don't think any of them were the fastest. I could be wrong.
Yeah.
I got you.
Okay, what were they?
In 2022,
yeah, I don't know what you got.
I got the combine database up. Tyquan Thornton.
Okay.
Ran a 4.28.
All right.
He's been a solid pro.
Okay.
I actually kind of that was my guy for a free agent pickup for the Browns.
Yeah.
Or for a
Yeah, but I think it's safe to say he hasn't been a superstar.
No, he hasn't.
He hasn't been a star.
And for the record, he's better than the next 4. Jones from Tennessee ran a 4.31. Calvin Austin, the third. I believe he's on the Steelers now.
Only receiver I know is Calvin.
He is on the Steelers.
He ran a 4.32. Danny Gray from SMU.
Don't know him.
Ran a 4.33. I interviewed Danny Gray when he was at Blink College. Hope Danny's doing well. And Bo Melton from
What's up,
Rutgers.
Danny?
So in this little exercise,
Danny boy, Danny boy.
In this little exercise, I think what we can deduce from it, very small sample size, is that there are a lot of attributes that make great players. At wide receiver, there are a lot.
Yeah.
I think chief among them are hands and route running.
Yes.
And then I think it's speed. And so, to your point, I've seen enough of Carnell Tate. I watched the tape. I watched every down of his career. This kid can play the position. So, I hope that the slower 40 time doesn't dissuade the Browns, even though I bring up the fact that I think it is a red flag. But these guys, the fastest combine wide receivers, in my mind,
Machine learning is advancing, but businesses wonder if some machines can keep up.
Let's welcome our new coworker, Jeff.
Copier has a great idea.
Wonder if it's the same idea as yesterday.
It's a performance issue, really. I know people push your buttons, but you still have to deliver.
Anything can change the world of work. ADP Assist is AI, informed by workplace data, and designed for the next anything.
This season, you've got places to go, people to see, and things to do. You may have already gotten vaccinated for flu and COVID-19, but other respiratory illnesses are still out there. If you're 50 or older, even if you're healthy, it may be important to help protect against pneumococcal pneumonia. And if you have certain health conditions, it may be important to help protect against RSV, too. Talk to your doctor or pharmacist about which vaccines you need. Help protect yourself with only one dose each.
I can't think that they automatically translate to great, successful wide receivers.
Yeah, no, that's fair, but at the same time, like, what held Brian Robisky back? I think it was his lack of speed.
Well, now listen,
And David Bell.
if you're a 4.7 guy, that's a different story. He wasn't. A 4.5, I think that's on the slower end of fast.
Yeah.
The
A
average
4.7
this season was 4.4.
What's that?
The average at the combine this season was a 4.44 for receivers.
Yes, so he's a tenth of a second almost slower. So that's why I say he's on the slow end of fast.
Yeah.
I would rather be on the slow end of fast than the fast end of slow, which is where Robisky was, and there have been other guys that came out 4.7.
Jarvis Landry. Jarvis Landry was running like a 4.7.
Yeah, Jarvis is not fast.
But if you can run
That's why
routes,
you never know, man. It's so hard.
Jerry Rice wasn't a burner.
It's so hard. It's not like you can say he's got this, and this is going to work.
Right.
Because you can line up two guys next to each other that have the same metrics. One guy can play and one can't.
Yeah, and there's no metric to measure this.
Yeah.
And Tyreek Hill was a guy who had success with great speed, but I think that if you line up the best, I don't remember what Jamar's 40 time was. He was fast, but I don't think he was probably in the top 5 of his class.
Oh, no, he was. I got them all up right here.
Okay, what are they?
Jamar Chase was the third fastest.
What was his 40
year.
time?
4.34.
That's quick.
Yeah.
Do you know who was the fastest that year?
That was a good year for wide receivers, wasn't
It
it?
was 2021, and I'll give you 10 seconds because it's Browns related.
Schwartz.
Yep.
Yeah, Anthony Schwartz.
Yep.
Yeah.
So I think the thing about Carnell Tate is, you talk about people and being fast. Well, he always seemed to be getting behind somebody. He was always behind. He was behind the defense against Michigan. He was behind the defense against Big Ten schools. No matter where it was, he got behind Texas. He makes big plays. He has great long speed. Now, the thing that I like about him is he's smooth, man. Like, this dude run every route on the field. He can run the bang 8. He can run the go ball route. He can run the slant. He goes over the middle. He can run the dig route. And the thing about him, he had the thing with the catching in traffic against Miami. But you go back and watch him, not just this year, but go back and watch him last year. He makes pro-type catches where he's catching the ball here, he's tucking it away, and he's got his feet in bounds no matter where he is. His body control is awesome, and it looks like when he's running, he could be running any route, but he just breaks it off, and it's very good. I mean, he's the quintessential I'm a pro.
Could you imagine if Smith was eligible to come out?
Oh,
The top of the draft, Ohio State would have guys littered in the first round.
Ryan Day.
And they didn't get to the championship.
Ryan Day, bro, you tripping. How you, what?
Insane.
How you lose that? How you, bro, you had crazy talent. Now here's the
reminds me of those John Cooper teams that couldn't beat Michigan. I mean, he had Eddie George, Terry Glenn, David Boston, Ricky, who was the tight end?
Orlando Pace.
Ricky Dudley, Orlando Pace. That team and he couldn't beat Michigan.
You just couldn't. Now, I think that I'll commend him for running the 40 because Jordan Tyson didn't run, and Makai Lemon didn't run.
Now more dudes aren't going to run.
I know, unfortunately.
And I know Makai Lemon is slower than Tate. I know he's going to run. He
has his own draft question.
Right. hey, listen, let me say that Makai Lemon,
he should have run.
Hey, let me tell you this, man. This dude is he's one of them.
He's different.
He's one of them dudes that if you go into a street fight, give me Makai Lemon.
Why?
Like, he looks like he's not at all. He looks like he's affiliated. He's plugged in on the street level. But I mean,
is he an LA kid? Do you know?
Yeah.
He was born and raised LA. Yep. He raised some red flags.
Man, boy. He's a great football player.
He's from LA.
And when I read a lot of this weekend about some of the comments about him, I thought, well, there you go. Browns are going to take him number 6.
Hey, listen.
There's your Browns draft pick.
Hey, I'm going to tell you what. The thing about Makai Lemon, he can play special teams. He doesn't play like that chip he talks off the field. He's a very calm dude on the field. On the field, he catches the ball back to the huddle. He catches the rock back to the wrist. He can go over the middle. He's tough. He comes down with 50-50 balls. He can run every single route. He's one of them dudes that if you go and he gets drafted by the Rams or the 49ers, he's going to be a nightmare.
Yeah, and the Rams especially. Oh, my. And you're right.
He will be an absolute terror. And you're going to be like, why?
But you put him in the wrong system, and he could be a nightmare for a different reason.
Now, he could. Now look, I will say this. If you come away with
I think the Jets or Browns would definitely take him.
Tyson, Tate, or Lemon, I'll be fine with it. But
are we locked in wide receiver at 6?
No.
Or we're not even sure about that?
I don't think nothing.
No, I don't mean the Browns. I mean what you guys want.
No.
Yeah, I don't. I haven't made my decision either.
I ain't really locked because
the free. Let's see what happens.
Got a long way to go.
We got a long way to go, and we could plug some holes before we get to the draft. We could make some more trades. You never know.
And people are slow. I don't know if it's popular. Y'all trying to talk me into this defensive player, but the more they keep doing around, you may say, all right, well, if you take care of some of this other stuff, it's easier to
there's plenty of ways to fill needs. Yeah. It doesn't have to be at 6. But again, I've been pretty consistent. The only way you take a defensive player at 6 is if you think he's going to keep him one day.
Right, yeah.
Like, that's it.
He better be an Hall of Famer.
The next level of Galaxy is here. Tune in to Galaxy Live for an exclusive sneak peek and offers you can't get anywhere else.
The other thing from the combine we have to address is the quarterbacks. And the Browns are not in play for a quarterback at 6. At least we don't believe they are in play for a quarterback at number 6. But some of the guys projected to go in the later rounds of the NFL draft made a statement, made themselves some money based off, once again, the underwear Olympics. A guy like Taylor Green, for example, if you were unfamiliar with him beforehand, he certainly jumped up a ton of boards.
Yeah.
Weighed in at 6'6", 227, ran a 4.37 40-yard dash. Set the combine vertical jump record for quarterbacks with a 43.5-inch vertical jump. He broad jumped 11 feet 2 inches. That was also a combine record. Threw the ball pretty well. Gee, when you looked at the quarterbacks on Saturday, I know they're hard to evaluate, throwing a receiver they haven't played with, yada, 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 yada. Did anyone open your eyes in a oh, he might be in play for the Browns with a late day 3 pick just to add into the quarterback competition, or did nobody kind of catch your eye in that sense?
No, well, I do think it's funny because you look at you take a look at what Cy Munker was talking about, and it's funny how many different people, because he was at Georgia and him recruiting people, how many of these guys like Gabe Klubnik he knew, or Nussmeier he knew. Carson Beck is a guy.
I played against Taylor Green.
Right, Taylor Green. So these guys, I do think those guys will go. I think those guys will go a lot higher than what you may naturally think based on their tape, because they are names. They are household names that people have been scouting and looking at, and these guys were taking a look at them. And so you go back, and what the scouting department will do is say, all right, we've done our homework on these guys since they were sophomores and juniors, right? And some people are going to come in and say, their junior tape, you go look at their junior tape, it's spectacular. And then you get to the senior year, and you're like, oh, there's some things that are a little off. But people are going to go back and reference that junior tape, and somebody will talk themselves and fall in love with the fact that, oh, okay, I like him a little bit. I think guys like Nussmeier, people say, oh, 5th or 6th. I think those guys will get pushed up a little bit. I think you could see him maybe go in the 3rd round. You could see, now Aller, I thought he threw the ball, I thought he was a little inconsistent. I think his drop, because of his ankle, he's still working that a little bit.
Why is the tax office
just by the
so
size, I think there's
attractive?
some teams that'll take him.
That size is intoxicating. It was coming out of Meta or wherever he played, Medina. People were infatuated with that size.
I think Ty Simpson, I think he's pushed himself like in the late, early 2nd, late 1st. Like if
doesn't Simpson have a connection to Monken too?
And
his dad and Monken,
their fathers were.
Yeah, I think teams like say for instance the Steelers, you're the Steelers, like, and you Mike McCarthy, you're like, okay, I don't know what's going on with Aaron Rodgers. And you picking at the end of the draft like that, end of the 1st round. I mean, there's somebody that'll talk themselves into it. I thought he threw the ball pretty well at the combine, and he was a little taller than I thought he would be. And I think he's the clear 2nd quarterback at this point. It
feels that way
at this point.
I think Ty Simpson's the 1st round pick, because it's not going to be one quarterback 1st round. So I think somebody's taking him in the 1st. Yeah, almost never.
Somebody's gonna make the move. Somebody will do it, especially if you have a little, like I said, Mike McCarthy. I mean, it's his 1st year. He got a little, house money. Like, you want to come in and try to figure out, see what you're gonna do. They took, what's his name?
The quarterback, Ohio State quarterback.
They took Howard. So, they got a couple.
And they really never got a chance to look at him.
Right.
I mean, he was hurt, and then I don't think he played with maybe a handful of snaps, if that. He wasn't even their backup. Because when Rodgers went down,
he just didn't. So, and it's a new coach. It's a fresh start. So who knows? We'll see what Mike McGee's a quarterback guy. We'll see what McCarthy likes. But I do think somebody will take Ty Simpson in the 1st round. Taylor Green, I think, is very intriguing. He reminds me of Jalen Milroe a little bit. The Seahawks took him last year. I think somebody may be able to take him and try to do something with. But some Klubnik and Nussmeier and those guys, they'll go higher than you think. I think these guys are going to go 4th round.
So I think we have 2 1st-round picks, quarterbacks picked in the 1st round, and I think that's it, right?
Yeah, I don't
think it could be 3.
No, I don't think
it'll probably be 2.
Yeah, it feels like 2 to me.
2. When did Shuck start climbing?
Pretty late.
Right around the combine. Senior Bowl.
I thought it was after the combine that he started climbing.
No, there was the interviews because McShay came on like this week last year for us.
Yeah.
And he was the one that was like, hey, I had the big, long, hour-long conversation with Shook. He's going to start flying up draft boards, and then it started to ascend.
I don't know. I think I agree with you. I think Nussmeier and Drew Aller are both going to go way before the 5th round.
Day 2.
Yeah.
Yeah, somebody gonna take one of those dudes because they're gonna say, well, we had a high grade on him his junior year. Then evidently there's some stuff in there that we can move around and try to fix.
There was talk that Aller would be the #1 overall pick this year.
Right.
There was talk that Aller would have been the pick at 2 last year, and he stayed in the
Yes.
Aller and Nussmeier both were.
Nussmeier too.
Were both.
Yeah, they had Klubnik going
into some non-combine.
1 second you know your dream's protected. And then...
Is everything okay?
The police have been dispatched. Well, we still do.
Quantum mechanics, people say it's a most wonderful theory and most amazing.
Not making fun of her.
The
Maybe I
universe.
am, but it's not out
Yes,
of
that's
malice.
true. But it doesn't give you a description of the universe which involves significant mass displacements.
Quantum theory says that any object, even a mountain, can exist in two places simultaneously. However, you never see this. Why? Today, I have a huge treat, as this was months in the making. A new experiment which until today was in the pre-publishing phase and is now published. Sir Roger Penrose and Professor Yvette Fuentes are here to talk about the controversial consequences it has for understanding the relationship between quantum theory, collapse, and gravity. My name's Kurt J. Mungle, and on this channel I interview researchers regarding their theories of reality with rigor and technical depth. Today, I finally have permission to show you a conversation that spans how Roger sees mass displacements as causing collapse, the difference between active and passive gravity, and the intricacies of this new Ron Fullman T-cubed experiment. We also go over Penrose's speculation about dark matter and cyclic cosmology. I traveled from Toronto to film live at Oxford University's Math Institute. I truly hope you enjoy this. I'm joined here with Roger Penrose and Yvette Fuentes. Welcome. Thank you all for coming again.
Thanks. Great to be here.
So, there's an experiment that's making the rounds. It's pre-published, not published yet. Maybe as of this recording it's published, but it's called the Ron Fullman Phase Experiment. You both see it as extremely important. However, there's disagreement in the field about its interpretation. So before we get to the importance of the experiment, how about you explain what the experiment is, Yvette, and then we'll hear, Roger, why you think it's so important.
Okay, yes, so it's a very special atom interferometer. So maybe I should start by explaining what an atom interferometer is. So, well, a regular interferometer, you have a photon and you pass it through what we call a beam splitter, which lets the photon go through one trajectory and then another. It's reflected by some mirrors, and then in another beam splitter, which is a crystal, that allows the two paths to interfere. And then at the output of the interferometer, you see interference fringes, and with a certain contrast and so on. So black and white interference fringes, typical from a wave propagation in the interferometer. So an atom interferometer is kind of the same thing, but instead of using photons, is using atoms. And well, one of the things that I find really beautiful about light and matter interactions is that if you have the atoms being interfered, instead of one uses like a crystal to interfere photons, you use laser fields, so light field, to make to play the role of the beam splitter for the atoms and so on. So a regular atom interferometer, you would have atoms arriving to the laser that splits the atom. So the atom goes itself in a superposition of two different trajectories. It gets reflected again. Instead of mirrors, there are fields that reflect it back so that they can interfere again at another laser, and then you can detect the output and so on. So that's kind of one version of this super famous experiment that was done in the early times of quantum mechanics with electrons, right? That the interference fringes of electrons were observed, confirming that that they behave quantum mechanically, this particle wave duality experiment. So that's now almost 100 years since the Nobel Prize was given to Pauli for that, and so on. But since then, people have been doing interference with atoms, and even with bigger systems. The record is by Marcus Arndt, where he can put molecules in the interferometer and see the fringes and the contrast. Now, what Ron did was a very special type of interferometer, because usually there's two different versions of it. One is the atoms are in free fall, so you take like an atom and you beam split it and you let it fall, but it's in such a way that the atom follows two different trajectories, and then with fields you make it interfere. And actually that's one way in which we measure gravity. That's a gravimeter, because the different sort of trajectories, due to that the atom picks up information of the local gravitational field, and that's how gravimeters are made. But they're in free fall. Another type of atom interferometer would be in which it's called a guided interferometer, in which you're have fields to trap the atoms. They're not in free fall, and then you could separate them and make them interfere again. So what Ron Foldman did is that he did a hybrid version of that, in which he takes the atom. So he starts with a Bose-Einstein condensate made of rubidium-87 atoms, and he cools them down to something like 3 nanokelvin. So this is super cold. It's as cold as we can get things in the lab, in the experiment. And then he makes the atoms go through the beam splitter. But one of the atoms, one of the arms of the interferometer is such that the atoms are at rest. So he basically acts with fields on the atoms such that he cancels gravity, and the atom is just levitating there. And in the other arm, he uses again fields to kick the other branch of the interferometer, and let then this atom go in free fall.
Okay.
So this is done with what we call an atom chip. So this is a chip where you can build like a little experiment inbuilt in the chip that produces, you do like wires, and they produce magnetic fields, and the whole system is controlled by this chip through the magnetic fields. So you use a magnetic field to make one of the branches levitate, and the other one to give a kick to the atom. So the magnetic fields sort of change the internal states of the atoms to some states that are C magnetic fields, and others that are that don't, to produce this sort of hybrid interferometer where one of the atoms is at rest in the lab and the other one is in free fall, and then he interferes them and he sees the fringes. And what he finds in the fringes is that there is an oscillation which has a very special type of oscillation, because oscillations obviously always depend on time, but this type of oscillation depends on the cube of time.
Okay.
Then maybe Roger can explain the significance of that.
Yes, well, the importance of the experiment, as far as I can make out, I'm not an experimentalist, so I have to judge for what other people say about it. But I gather the idea is, you see, there's a very famous principle called the principle of equivalence. It actually goes back to Galileo, so it's a very ancient principle, which is that you can get rid of gravity by free fall. So Galileo imagined dropping a big rock and a little rock from the Leaning Tower or something like that, and he was well aware that air resistance, if you drop a feather in a rock, the feather will go slower, but that was because of air resistance. He was perfectly aware of that. But if you could remove the air, then the two would fall together. That is to say...
My friend refused to believe that till the day he died, even though we proved it to him like 1,000 times. I think he was just trying to get
If you were in a falling frame, it would look as though they're simply hovering there and gravity has disappeared. So that the principle of equivalence basically is to say that locally a gravitational field is just like an acceleration. So you can get rid of it by freely falling. Now that's well known for classical physics from Galileo, and it's a basic principle that when you go to relativistic situations, looking at fastly moving things like that, then Einstein used this as the basis for his general theory of relativity. So Einstein's general relativity was based on this very principle of equivalence, that you can get rid of a gravitational field by simply falling. Of course, if you want to say you can get it freely falling in Pisa, for example, but that doesn't get rid of it in New York. So if you want to have a theory which encompasses the principle of equivalence, that's where Einstein comes in and needs to have curved space-time in order to make sense of this principle of equivalence. It is the basic principle of Einstein's general theory of relativity. Now the question is, to what extent is this also consistent with quantum mechanics? And the basic principle is this principle of equivalence. Is the principle of equivalence respected by quantum mechanics? Now theoretically, you can look at this and say, if you have an accelerating frame, does it look the same as having a force? And it almost does. When I say almost, it's quite surprising how almost it works. Because you could consider two cases. One is that you could consider a quantum mechanical situation where you put a term in the Hamiltonian, that's the technical term, but considering you have a force, and you describe that force by putting a term in the Hamiltonian. That's basically what you do. Then you can try it again a different way, which is to consider a freely falling frame, and you do freely falling coordinates. And you see, is the answer the same? Well, it's almost the same. When I say almost, it's a bit hard to explain without knowing a bit about quantum mechanics, that you find that your wave function, the thing that describes the system, differs by a phase factor. That's a number which multiplies your wave function by a number which you can ignore normally because the phase factor doesn't come into calculations of probabilities and things like that. But if you look carefully at the phase factor, and you compare it, the free fall case, with the gravitational force case, you see that there is a phase factor which is a little bit peculiar because it involves an exponential of the cube of the time. T is the time, t cubed in that expression. And you might say, well, who cares, because when you're working out probabilities and things like that, this doesn't enter into it. However, it means you really are looking at something a bit different. That the term, to be a little bit technical, it means that your quantum theory is a little bit different. In quantum field theory, you have to start with what you call the vacuum, and you build up your states by putting things into the vacuum. Now, the vacuum state is different in these two cases because of this TQ term. So it's interesting to see whether quantum mechanics really respects the principle of equivalence in this particular way. And to see that, and it's purely theory that you'd expect to see this. Now, does nature really respect this theory? And what's, to me, important about this experiment is you actually see this T-cubed effect in the experiment. So you can see, you can look at the phase by comparing one branch with the other, and apparently this experiment seems to see exactly what you would hope to see if the principle of equivalence is respected by quantum mechanics. And to me this is very important because it's combining these two great theories of 20th century physics, one general relativity, which is a purely classical theory, and it's based on the principle of equivalence being true. That's the basic principle upon which the whole theory is based. And when you think about quantum mechanics, you want that to fit in with this framework, and we do see that the way in which it has to fit in was with this curious exponential of a T-cubed term, and you see this in the phase which is observed in the experiment. So it seems to me, although one expects it from theoretical grounds, you expect the but it's important to see that it's really true. And it's not a surprising result in the sense that you'd expect the principle of equivalence to hold in quantum system too, but the fact that it actually does, and it shows up in this peculiar term, is very important. It also has an importance when you go a little further, and this is not something which, see, the T-cubed term apparently has been seen about 100 years ago in other. I looked up the old papers and I never could quite see why it's actually doing the same. It's just calculations when you're looking at things in accelerating frames and so on. So you can say, well, it's not that exciting. But that's just for mathematics. You can see you need this term in order to make the acceleration be equivalent to the acceleration due to gravity being equivalent to free, something you can get rid of with free fall. But the importance of the experiments, I think, is just to verify that this is true. And it's also important, if you take this a little further, this is not part of the experiment, but it's part of what I looked at and what Yvette and I looked at in papers which we looked at, we collaborated with later on. And the thing is that if you consider that going a little further, by considering some body and its own gravitational field is important. Now, you've got the field of the Earth, and you've got some other body which maybe be putting into a superposition. And you look at the field of Earth, and then you think, well, the correct way of looking how gravity is dealt with in quantum mechanics is you say, well, you can get rid of it locally by the principle of equivalence. Now, if you have a body which is put into a superposition of two different locations, is that still true? And the trouble is you can't really do it with an individual body because you can't, the acceleration is different all the way around the body. So you have to sort of look at it a little bit more. But what we do is we say, well, we know that getting rid of the gravitational field by free fall is the correct way of doing it, but you can't do that with a body in superposition because the free fall is different in different places and all that stuff. So what you've got to do is to try and see, if you do it there, thinking of gravity as a force and saying, well, that's not quite the right way of doing it, but think of it as a force and see whether there is an error that you can calculate. And then you work out this error, and you see that tells you this thing has a lifetime. And that's important because the lifetime of a superposition is that something, if you have a body here and here at the same time, quantum mechanics, you can have a body here and a body here, and the state with it being here and here at the same time is part of quantum mechanics. It can be two places at once. That's a well-known puzzle by quantum mechanics. But if you have a big body which gravitates, does that give you problems? And yes, it does. You find it gives you, because of all this business with TQ and all that stuff, and you see that it does give you a problem. And that problem indicates that this superposition maybe is unstable in a sense, that it will decay into one or the other in a certain lifetime, which would be very exciting to see. I mean, that's going way beyond what one can do at the moment in experiments. But do we see in experiments, and this is the experiment that Yvette is involved in trying to do, can you see effects that show up, well, sort of comparing the gravitational field in effect of the body itself? Does that lead to effects that you can experimentally observe? I really can't go into it because it's rather technical. In fact, I'm
trying to have educated people in here.
In Yvette's experiment is to see whether these effects that should come about from this experiment, whether these effects are there. Now, you see, it's important because quantum mechanics, I mean, people say it's a most wonderful theory and most amazing description of the universe. Yes, that's true. It is a wonderful theory, and it gives you an amazing description of the universe, but it doesn't give you a description of the universe which involves significant mass displacements. That is to say, a massive body in two places at once. You're only looking at things where the mass of the bodies can be ignored. And all experiments at the moment which confirm quantum mechanics involve effects where the mass displacements are much too small to have any effect.
Thanks to NOLA Mattress for sponsoring this episode. Head to nolamattress.com/TOE and use code TOE to get an extra $50 off your mattress. NOLA is an award-winning mattress brand known for cooling technology, exceptional pressure relief, and long-lasting durability, all shipped to your door for free. I'm a side sleeper personally, and I've always had two struggles, at least two primary struggles. Overheating is one at nighttime, and then another is finding a mattress that's actually comfortable for extended periods. So I went with the NOLA Evolution King in luxury firm. I just got it a few weeks ago. Here's some footage of me. The difference is immediate. I'm falling asleep much quicker, which for someone who records late night interviews often, it's a huge, huge deal. Sleep is a huge deal. The temperature regulation is also phenomenal. I often run hot when I sleep, same with my wife. And now I'm not waking up overheated, constantly turning my pillow over. And the real test, as I mentioned, my wife loves it. If you're married, you know that that matters almost more than anything else. The comfort level compared to our old mattress isn't even close. All NOLA mattresses are made to order at the Arizona facility. No harmful chemicals, no fiberglass. So there's zero off-gassing concerns. I know that's something that my mother-in-law in particular cares about. Visit nolamattress.com/TOE with code TOE for $50 off. That's NOLAH mattress.com/TOE. It ships straight to your door in the US for free. It arrives rolled up in a box, and the setup is trivial. Unbox it and let it expand. You get a 120-night sleep trial, so you have over 3 months to make sure that you love it. Plus, there's a limited lifetime warranty with financing options available. If you're looking for a new mattress, head to nolamattress.com/TOE and use code TOE for an extra $50 off. This is an additional discount on top of what's already being offered on their site, so check them out while you can.
Springtime is almost here, and if you've been itching to redo every room in your home, Bob's Discount Furniture can help. When you shop at Bob's, you get wow-worthy everyday low prices on fabulous furniture for every room. Everything from stylish mid-century dining sets and top-rated Bobapedic mattresses with the best warranties in the business to pop-up sleeper sectionals, all for a fraction of what they cost elsewhere. So stop in or shop online and get wow-worthy prices for less only at Bob's.
So you want to have an experiment where you're beginning to see this effect. And this was telling us where, you see, quantum mechanics has this problem that it gives you ridiculous answers if you think of it from macroscopic bodies. I mean, why couldn't a rock sitting on the table here be in these two places at once? And according to the framework of quantum mechanics, sure, they could be in two places at once, but you never see a rock in two places at once. And that depends upon going a little further, and you have to say, well, if you consider the gravitational field of the rock, and can that be consistent with quantum mechanics, you lead into certain problems. And these problems seem to indicate that lifetime of a rock being in two places at once, there's a finite lifetime. And for an actual rock, it will be a ridiculously tiny fraction of a second. You try and put it in this place and this place at the same time, it wouldn't last. It would be absolutely instantaneous. It'd become one or the other. And that's what we would experience in actual life. We don't see things in superpositions of two places at once. People often say, well, the reason you don't is because the environment has got involved in the thing. That's not a real answer. You have to say, why does the environment actually make a difference? If you go into the calculations, you look at it, no, it doesn't answer the question. It's because the environment is also, it's sort of moved around, yes, and the environment can be most of the movement in the system. And that's why the thing can't be in two places at once, because the environment has been jiggled too much. But there's no experiment yet that has looked at this effect of why quantum mechanics, if you like, gets into trouble with macroscopic bodies. And when you have mass displacements, but you see, it's a long way from the experiment that has been done, that Yvette was just describing, the one where you have the bodies in free fall and compare it with the one on the table, so to speak, and you see this T-cube factor. That's just the first hint of why macroscopic bodies don't behave as you might expect as a quantum mechanical system. And it's the first little clue. That's why it's important. I think it's only a little clue, but it's important as being the first little clue, as far as I can see.
So it sounds to me like this Ron Volman T-cubed experiment is testing whether the equivalence principle holds in quantum mechanics. Okay, seems like the answer is yes. It seems to me like it would be more interesting if the answer was no, because that would indicate there's some inconsistency there. And it sounds like what you're saying, Roger, is that your experiment takes this further to test a collapse model, a certain type of collapse model, namely yours.
Okay, so let me clarify a few things and talk about the experiments that are taking place by other groups, and so to put the whole thing in context. I mean, the reason why Roger says that Ron experiment is very far away is because effectively the experiment of Ron is with one atom. And, well, maybe it's good to also make the distinguish between passive gravity and active gravity that you usually make, and I think this sort of clarifies things. So, you have, the Earth, active mass, let's say, makes the atoms fall. And then you would say, okay, but then the Earth has a passive mass, but the Sun has the active mass that makes the Earth move around. No, so that was by I think it was given by Newton, this distinction. No, so what Ron has is that he has the atom as a passive mass in a superposition in the active mass of the active gravitational field of the Earth. But the field, the mass of the system itself is just a superposition in the presence of the field of the Earth. And what Roger calculations and ideas and so sort of he argued is that under that circumstance, the equivalence principle and the superposition principle they're not in conflict with each other. No, so that's exactly what Ron shows. and what Roger was just explaining now, just put in active, passive terms, is that when you have, now forget about the Earth, there's no Earth, it's just the superposition of the atom with itself. So in that case, it's the active mass of the atom in a superposition that Roger pointed out that in that case, there is a conflict between the equivalence principle and the superposition principle that should lead to the collapse. Now, why in the experiment by Ron you cannot measure that is because for one atom the effect is tiny. So you would have to wait, I think it's 10 to the 20 seconds or something like this to see the effect for one atom. So basically you can just neglect that and forget about it. But the point is that when you start having heavier systems, then this becomes relevant. So Roger and I wrote a paper where we were exploring the possibilities of doing an experiment with a Bose-Einstein condensate. And in that paper we gave numbers. So usually this atom interferometry experiment, that's a good reference that we were talking about for Ron. The experiment, it takes milliseconds. That's how long he can hold this superposition. You would need, let's say, if Ron could keep a superposition for a second or two, which is still really far away from what experiments have, but it's not impossible. But in order to see the effects of self-gravity, you would need something like 10 to the 9 atoms in a superposition. So a mass, like for example, could be a lump or like a silicia bead with the equivalence of
money.
Let's say,
right.
Very roughly speaking, with 10 to the 9 atoms in it. And that's very different to the one atom that Ron had in his impressive, I mean, his experiment is impressive, but tests something different. Now, there has been progress in testing the superposition with massive systems, and like I mentioned before, the record is currently by Marcus Arndt at the University of Vienna, where he puts these molecules that have like 2,000 atoms each. Well, but that's the molecule in superposition with itself. But that's the comparison with, I think now he managed to do this with an order of magnitude more, but I don't know, I heard, so I don't know if that's like published yet or not. But last thing I heard was that he managed to take it one order of magnitude further. So let's say something like 2 times 10 to the 4, compared to we found 4 times 10 to the 9, really far away.
Yes.
And it's very difficult to take those steps by making things more and more precise. And there's many groups around the world working in that direction. Ron Foldman himself, he wants to do the experiment with diamonds, which have a lot more mass. But it's very difficult to put solids in a superposition because they're very hot. So they can, for example, Marcus can cool down the molecules to.
Shopping with your parents can be embarrassing.
Why would they sell jeans with holes in them? I'm going to speak to the manager.
Mom!
That hoodie is giving. You should get it. YOLO.
Thanks to the Chase mobile app, your kid can shop independently while you keep an eye on their spending. So you can go from
We can be twinsies.
to
How was shopping? Saw you stayed on budget.
thanks, Mom. Freedom for kids, control for parents. That's family banking from Chase.
Account subject to approval. Chase mobile app is available for select mobile devices. Message and data rates may apply. JP Morgan Chase Bank NA, member of DIC.
I think it's microkelvin temperatures. And those temperatures are still too hot to see the gravitational effects. But still, there's a lot of activity worldwide because of the importance of this experiment to our understanding of the interplay of quantum mechanics and gravity, that there's many people trying. So they use nanodiamonds, silicia beads, silicia rods, membranes, cantilevers. There's a number of possibilities. But if you see, all of these involved solids. and that's kind of the state of the art and where things are at. No? So now a Bose-Einstein condensate, we were talking about that before, you can cool down to half a nanokelvin. So from millikelvin to half a nanokelvin, that's like a really long, and then you would say, well, why, that was kind of the idea, why not use a Bose-Einstein condensate? So they have another problem. Maybe before I go into Bose-Einstein condensate, I would also like to mention work from two other people that I'm like impressed.
Sure.
And another one is Markus Aspenmeier, who is also at the University of Vienna. So I spent 3 years there because of these amazing people, because I like to propose experiments and so on. So having the opportunity to talk to the two Marcuses, Anton Seilinger is also there. It's just an amazing place to do experiments. Markus Aspenmeier can cool down a bead to quantum scales, and these beads are pretty big. They have like 10 to the 8 atoms. So they have kind of getting the mass right, but he hasn't been able to put the bead in a superposition.
I haven't been listening
so he
at
can
all.
cool this big system to the ground state, to quantum scales of a harmonic oscillator, but he's still working towards doing the superposition. And another person that I would like to mention is Hendrik Ulbricht, who's at the University of Southampton. And he's done some really beautiful experiments measuring gravity with these nanobeads. So these are like the smallest sort of systems that they can still measure gravity between two different, not just one, it's like two different systems. It's not quantum yet, but it's really like their technology is really getting quite impressive. But still very far away from being able to test if gravity collapses the wave function. So we wrote this paper on what could you do with a Bose-Einstein condensate, because could we use as an advantage that you can cool it down to those temperatures. But now, here comes the big problem, is that if you take a Bose-Einstein condensate, what you want to do to test the gravity is that you want to create a superposition of the atoms left and right. Actually, I didn't say what a Bose-Einstein condensate is. Maybe I should start there. So take an atom in a well and cool it down to the ground state. So that you do in second year quantum mechanics is the typical example. And it's really beautiful because what you see when you cool down the atom to the ground state is that it becomes completely delocalized in the potential. So it's not just like left or right, it's like everywhere. Now take 10 to the 5. That's like the typical size of a Bose-Einstein condensate for most experiments. 10 to the 5, 10 to the 6, rubidium, sodium, something like this, atoms into the ground state. So the system, because atoms are bosons, the system behaves like a big macroscopic system behaving quantum mechanically. So that's very nice, and people use them for many things. But now the challenge is take the 10 to the 6 we need 10 to the 9 actually, to create a superposition of left and right. And that is very difficult because a Bose-Einstein condensate is not a solid, it's a fluid. So in particular, the atoms are not bounded together. And the moment that you lose one single atom from this superposition, all of them left, plus all of them down, left and right. So you would do this in what we call a double well potential. So people in the lab have already done these double well potentials, like for example, Markus Overthaler in Heisenberg. Several people, but I remember him in particular, that you can have these atoms in these double wells, but nobody has been able to do a superposition of left plus right in that way, because if you lose one, the whole thing collapses. And actually they just haven't, I think the record is 2 atoms or something like this by Chris Westbrook in this situation. So whereas the temperatures seem to be kind of promising, well then the fact that the atoms, if you lose one, is so fragile, then again made the possibility look very unlikely. But then, what people actually do in the lab is that they don't prepare these states, which are actually called noon states, because are n on the left, nothing on the right, plus nothing on the right, n on the left, so they're called noon states. Is that they've been able to prepare another type of states, that are very interesting. So in a double well potential, again, because the atoms are not bounded, you can have the atoms tunnel from one well to the other. Now, the Nobel Prize a few days ago, on the 7th of October,
Right.
was given to tunneling. And in a different system, right? But the fact that atoms can tunnel through a potential. So what you have in a Bose-Einstein condensate is that, in a double potential, is that the atoms can tunnel from one well to another. And that gives you like a variety of quantum states that you cannot get in a solid. Because in a solid, they're all bounded together, so you can only do a superposition here. But in a double well, you could do more like a whole family of very rich quantum states. One type are called like two-mode squeeze states, and this is like superpositions of 1, 1, 2, 2, 3, 3, like a more sophisticated state. But some of these generalized states have already been produced in the lab with quite a few number of particles.
Commercial
so
or
those
probably
are
like office
accessible
buildings,
to the experiment. So then you would say, why don't you test
businesses in them?
gravitational effects, active gravity, in those systems that people have already produced that sort of state? Well, because there was no formalism to study the gravitational self-energy for that kind of states. And actually, well, we tried for a while, but now I have developed like a new formalism that allows you to study self-gravity for these new states. And then you can use these easier, more accessible states that don't have the super strong requirement that you would have on one hand on solids, or on the other hand on the new states, to test the gravitational effects. And this is the experiment that Roger sometimes mentions. And I think I should say that the experiment, I'm a theoretician, you know, I figured out how to calculate the self-gravity for these states and proposed the experiment, but the experiment is being done by Philippe Boyer at the University of Amsterdam and Chris Westbrook, who's in Paris. So is the team are, you know, us, and with the advice always of Roger, and of course we have students and so on. So it's a very nice team. I love it. I love working with Philippe and Chris, and of course with Roger. And well, let's see if this alternative route gives us some results, hopefully, in the near future.
Roger, why is this T-cube test? Why is it with Ron Fulman? Why is it causing such a hubbub in the physics community among the people who know about it?
I'm a bit confused myself, so I don't think I can answer your question. I think I get the impression that Ron was not quite so. I mean, what I regard as important about his experiment, he was not regarding perhaps as the main feature of the experiment. I'm not sure.
I don't think so. I think Ron is very much in agreement with the importance.
Well, I was a bit puzzled because he was trying to remove the term principle of equivalence from his. He was suggesting. I mean, he's changed his mind. I said that's ridiculous. You see.
Yeah.
So he seemed to have a somewhat different view about the importance of his experiment. Yeah. I don't know. Maybe I'm going wrong.
No, I don't think so. I do think that he sees it in the same light as you do. I think there's been some confusion about it because the point that Roger makes is a subtle one. It's a subtle point, and I think not always is that maybe people working in atom interferometry and quantum experiments are not that familiar with the subtleties of it, and somehow I think it goes somehow overlooked. That's why I think it's great that Roger explains his point of view and so on in this alternative way.
I mean, he wasn't removing the principle of equivalence, but I just thought the fact that he was puzzled me, that's all.
Yeah.
It seems to me it's an important experiment and it ought to be. I mean, it's not unexpected in the sense that when you look at the subtleties of the principle of equivalence in connection with quantum mechanics. We
But
don't.
that's the case like with every proposal. Like you propose something,
Yeah.
right? That you prove mathematically using the theory. Like what example that I gave about, I took the theory of Berry phase that put a vacuum state, and and then for me it was like, well, the fact that this was shown was not a surprise, because the mathematics and the theory showed already. I don't know very well why there was a controversy about it. Sometimes there's a controversy on like the assumptions that you might make in a given proposal or in a different result. But in that way, an experiment confirming like a theory, sometimes like, oh, well, it was not expected, but it's always like in a way a surprise, because the theory can have places where it goes wrong, right? Like in, well, I mean, hopefully not in the mathematics, but sometimes, or more likely, I think, in the assumptions made. So it's always, for me, a big thing when an experiment confirms a piece of theory, But this time it's been like a long time that the theory is quite well established, and finally the experiment confirms it.
Yeah, yeah.
The Economist covers math, physics, philosophy, and AI in a manner that shows how different countries perceive developments and how they impact markets. They recently published a piece on China's new neutrino detector. They cover extending life via mitochondrial transplants, creating an entirely new field of medicine. But it's also not just science. They analyze culture, they analyze finance, economics, business, international affairs across every region. I'm particularly liking their new insider feature. It was just launched this month. It gives me, a front row access to The Economist's internal editorial debates, where senior editors argue through the news with world leaders and policymakers in twice weekly long format shows. Basically an extremely high quality podcast. Whether it's scientific innovation or shifting global politics, The Economist provides comprehensive coverage beyond headlines. As a toll listener, you get a special discount. Head over to economist.com/TOE to subscribe. That's economist.com/TOE for your discount. It seems like we've covered the ground when it comes to the Ron Foldman experiment. I'll end with a question that is, I think you all agree or you all disagree, but for similar reasons. Does the graviton exist?
Oh, gosh.
Good question.
Well, I'd hope so. I'm not sure whether that's relevant to any... That's something, a different question.
Yes. We're changing gears.
No, well, I would certainly think it has to have... There would be such a thing as a graviton, yes. But this is... You see, gravity in normal experience is so weak. I mean, it's to try and see quantum effects in gravitation are extremely difficult. It's not. It's as a force, it's very, very weak. I mean, it's not really a force even. It behaves differently from other standard forces. So I'm not quite sure what the question is here. I mean, why is gravitons not observable as such?
No. What I'm wondering is, in our first conversation, there's plenty of talk about, well, let's not focus so much on quantizing gravity, let's quote-unquote gravitize or gravitationalize the quantum. In quantum gravity, the graviton makes appearances, but not in all quantum gravities. For instance, loop quantum gravity doesn't have a graviton. We also should have talked about... We should have talked about spin networks, actually. That's another conversation.
Yeah.
Anyhow, I wanted to know if, because of the way that you view the world, as in gravitizing the quantum, it doesn't seem like there's room for the graviton to exist.
I think that's a bit misleading. That's not my point of view. Gravitons should exist. It's just we're so far away from anything which would see gravitating is such a you see it's a macroscopic thing. I mean, the fact that we're sitting down on the Earth here, sitting down on our chairs rather than floating around, is because there's an enormous... you have to have something that big in order to see the effect. And so if you want to try and do an experiment in a lab, which is looking for the quantum effects of gravitation, is hugely far off. Doesn't mean I don't think there are such things as gravitons. It just means that the effects of the particle effects of gravitation are so far away from anything that one could see in an experiment. It's all right to talk about them, and I do sometimes. But what we see is gravitational fields. And the fields are but you see, gravity is different in many respects. It doesn't even have an energy momentum tensor in the same way that ordinary things do. I mean, you can force it into it, but it's not. I'm not sure. So I'm not answering your question, really. You see, I think there's a whole subject which doesn't really exist, and I haven't quite thought of a good name for it, which is, I would say, big physics, but big is the wrong word. I'm trying to think of the right word.
Temporalology.
No, that's not
Chinatown,
right.
baby.
No, it's something to do
I
with...
just built a bunch of industry there.
Scale.
That's all that's there.
You see,
Bunch of industry.
what is the biggest stuff in the universe, in a sense, according to the biggest mass? Well, it's dark matter. All these particles that we talk about, which are so important to our existence and experiments that we've done and all that stuff, they're a trivial correction, if you like, to the big stuff in the world. Now, what's the big stuff? Well, the big stuff is dark matter, which in my view is a form of gravity, and gravitons. Now, they're big stuff. So that to treat them quantum mechanically is a way off, way off, you see. I mean, it may be that the dark matter particles decay in a way that conceivably could be observed. That would be very exciting if that's the case. But it's a different world almost. I mean, it's not a different world because I was sitting down here in chairs which are we're not floating around because of gravity. But it's a different world from the particles and the which behave very quantum mechanically when you go discuss them. But they're a trivial modification to the big stuff, which I'm trying to say. I need a better word for it than that. And the big stuff would be gravitation and dark matter, basically. And cosmological constant in some form.
Pete, what is this?
And that there's a whole world of how to describe all that stuff. And the matter is a sort of perturbation. But it's, of course, very important and to us. Our lives are dominated by the small stuff. But I don't know the right way to talk about that, so...
You could say dominating stuff, no?
Well, it's certainly dominated. You see, the dark matter is the main stuff. You know, in the solar system, in the galaxy. It's the dark matter. Now, we don't have a proper theory of it. I mean, it's very far from the small stuff which we're made of. And we're a perturbation. If you consider the overall effect of it, we're a little perturbation to what's happening to the big stuff. So it needs a theory of big stuff. And that's really what I'm trying to think about mainly, at least on the physics side. Because cosmology is very much driven by that kind of thing. Of course, you do have matter playing a role as well, but it's more like a perturbation to what the big stuff is doing. I don't think I'm going to call it big stuff. That's not a very good term. I would need a more. What do we need? Something. A grander term. Grand. You could call it the grand stuff. I don't know. That's not quite stuff.
Yvette, does the graviton exist?
I think so, yes. I think gravity should be quantized, so I would disagree with my colleague Jonathan Oppenheim on that. By the way, I love his work. Like, I am a fan of what he does, although I disagree, that gravity is classical, like he proposes, but what I really love about his work is that he comes with his own idea on how would you unify, let's say, a gravitational theory, which is more like stochastic.
Who's work we're talking about?
Jonathan Oppenheim from UCL.
Oh.
Yeah, well, I mean, what he's done that I like is that he proposes an experiment. So that's what I admire of his work. Oh, well, and I also that he comes up with his own idea on how to unify gravity and quantum mechanics. But he does it, he says that gravity should not be quantized, but it's more like a stochastic thing. But then he proposes an experiment, and that's why I love his work so much, because that's it where I want things to go. That we start being creative, we come up with our ideas, we propose things that can be tested in the experiment, and then since experiments are really getting so, I mean, they are amazing, and they can go, well, when people would do entanglement on tabletop experiments. Now, Andrew Seilinger has been able to do, demonstrate entanglement across thousands of kilometers using satellites. I mean, you see, the progress has been really amazing in many different directions. So I think that we have to make use of quantum technologies and these improvements in order to find ways of testing the theory. And like we were talking before about how some things maybe look impossible, but if you find the right angle and the right way to post things, then maybe they're more at reach. I also maybe gave you an example of how to do with these states. There are kind of the states that already people do in the lab, or another example of thinking things in a different perspective, no? So I do think that gravity should be quantized, and I do think that there is a particle, that mediates. I don't know if the graviton is, as in other, candidate theories propose, but I do think that there might be such a thing, yeah.
Something that interests me about you is that you propose interesting experiments. Popper is often misquoted as saying that if your theory is falsifiable, then it's scientific. It's actually the opposite. If your theory is scientific, then it's falsifiable. It's a necessary condition, but it's not a sufficient one. I could imagine a theory or theorist who says, okay, I've predicted supersymmetry is going to come on at 14 TeV. And then it doesn't. And then they say, okay, they work away, and then they say it's going to come on at 14.5 TeV. And so they're making predictions, and perhaps they're even proposing experiments, and then it doesn't show up. And then they'll say 15 TeV. I'm just imagining right now.
Yes.
If that's a word. I'm imagining right now. Okay, so what makes a good experiment? What makes a good theorist who proposes good experiments? Because what I just said, I imagine, isn't great science.
I can't tell when an experiment is going to work or not. I mean, that's business. I mean, sure, it's got to be testable. I mean, a theory which is not. But you see, it doesn't have to be experiments. When I talk about big stuff, what's the biggest stuff pretty well that's ever, not the whole universe, but is these wonderful observations due to Alexia Lopez. Huge rings of galaxies. Absolutely enormous. They're so big that there wasn't enough time in the age of the universe to make them that big. When I say the age of the universe, I'm talking about the normal view about the age of the universe, which is starting with the Big Bang. My view is that there has to have been something prior to the Big Bang which would cause this. Now, this is observational. I mean, they're not experiments in the sense that Yvette's doing. I mean, you've got your lab and you observe, testing certain things that you can test in a lab. These are out there in the world, and you're observing what's
Why
there.
is it too loud over
You have
here?
to take
What's
what's given to
specifically
you.
too loud over here?
But some of these effects tell you maybe something different about the universe from what you thought previously.
Well, we're gonna
And I think these rings that Alexia Lopez has seen, when she's seen, I mean, the techniques are very important, which she happened to use in order to make these observations. That apparently, I should say, there are several times the diameter of the moon, you see. You're looking at, if you could actually see these rings, they would be a big thing in the sky. Really enormous. And she's found 3 of them, apparently. The ones that were in the news more recently. Well, first it was the ring. Actually, she found the arc. There was an arc and then a ring. And then I was in email contact with her, and she said she thinks the arc is actually another ring. So there are 2 rings. And I heard recently that she's found a 3rd one. Now, these huge things were not predicted by anybody, not even by me, I should say. So although when I heard about them, I thought they were very exciting because they seemed to confirm the fact that there was something prior to what we believe to be our universe. And they
So,
would
like,
be
what's the
something
point
like
of the hospital?
the collisions between enormous supermassive black holes. You expect to see this in the remote future. You've got galactic clusters of galaxies, and these clusters of galaxies that we see in our universe, they're so big.
Some math.
Well, I should say first that the galactic cluster does not expand with the universe; they remain bound. So as the universe expands, these clusters remain more or less bound. But then the stars in them gradually get swallowed by black holes, and the black holes get bigger and bigger and bigger and gulp down most of the stars. And then occasionally you get a few big black holes which will run into each other sometimes. Absolutely enormous black holes. And they will send out a signal with gravitational waves. And these gravitational waves, according to the view I'm trying to promote, will come through from the previous eon into ours, and could well trigger the galaxies which we now see. It would be an enormous effect which would trigger the creation of new galaxies. And these galaxies could be in the form of what we see as a ring. So I found her observations very exciting, because although I hadn't thought of this as an observational test, thinking about it later, it's a very good indication that there was something before the Big Bang. I'm only saying this really in the context of our conversation. There's a whole area of not so much experiment, but observation. I'm located telescopes they make and the techniques that are used to see these rings. For instance, there's a new technique where you look at magnesium lines, and you're looking at absorption lines in magnesium, and that tells you the presence of galaxies. I don't understand it fully, but they tell you the presence of the galaxies. So you don't see these rings. You see them only by the absorption lines in these magnesium, and you look at more distant quasars and the light from them, so on and so. But all I mean is there are a lot in the way of observation. Okay, it's experiments to some degree, because you're maybe sending a satellite out there which can see effects that you wouldn't see just from sitting on the Earth. It strikes me that there's a whole other area of observational physics, which tells us something about the structure of the universe and about the contents of the universe. Because these dark, well, I think it's the dark matter. And I have a view which I'm still not quite formalized, which has to do with how gravitons.
Need to get up there.
You asked me about gravitons. Yes, I do believe that gravitons should be there. On the whole, when it looks at overall effects, so you don't see individual gravitons, but there's another particle, which would be the dark matter particle, which I refer to as an erebon. This is I think that, well, I've used that term in papers. So.
I like that name very much.
Wait, sorry, repeat that name?
Erebon. Well, you see, there's Erebus or Erebos.
Ah,
who
right,
is the god of darkness. He's a very ancient. Way before, he's not even a god because the gods were more recent. You see, I don't know about.
It was a good idea to call the party.
He was a pre-god, I think. But he was, I think, what was it? Chaos. Yes. You see, chaos was. This isn't physics at all. this is
it's
Greek
just
mythology.
a nice word.
Yes, it's a nice word. So I thought that Erebon was a good term because it is the god of darkness. You see, and he was way there with chaos right at the beginning. You see,
as a student, I found how sometimes physicists are very good at finding very beautiful names for horrible to calculate things. So I was so much looking forward to learning what's charm and what's strangeness. It sounds like wonderful. And then when I actually had to do some calculations, I was like,
yes. Well, some of the names are dreadful, I think. I mean, dark energy to me is a dreadful name because it's neither dark nor is it energy. It's certainly not energy. It's in the wrong place when you put the energy momentum business. It's not an energy was a certain spot in that thing, and this is not that at all. That's certainly not energy. It's not dark. It's invisible. The dark matter suffers from the same thing. It's not dark. It's invisible. I mean, if you look at galaxies, you see dark ring. If you see a galaxy edge on, you see maybe there will be a black line down the middle. Now that's dark. That's dark stuff. But that's not dark matter. The dark matter you can't see at all. It's invisible. And that's a quibble. I think dark energy is worse than a quibble. I think that really is a bad name. I just heard somebody on the radio saying what a wonderful name it was, and he'd only thought of this, and it just fits so well, and all that stuff.
I wanted to say something about the experiments. Actually, I wanted to mention 2 experiments. I think the comment I wanted to make is how difficult sometimes is to rule something out. So DOC came up with the idea as well. Roger and Lajos DOC came up with this idea independently, that gravity collapses the wave function. But DOC took it a step forward and wrote down a stochastic model that predicts more the detail of the collapse, but it does not conserve energy. So one of the predictions of the model is this radiation that should be observed, and there's been a really beautiful experiment done underground by Catalina. Can you remind me how to pronounce her name? She's done these experiments underground, well, with a big...
Oh, this is the heating.
Yeah.
Spontaneous heating, yes.
So she's done an amazing experiment to test not only DOC's model, but a whole bunch of collapse models. And they haven't seen the signature of these models, right? So up to certain parameters, these models have been ruled out. But, models usually depend on a parameter. So then you could say, well, you can't really say, that's it, the models are dead because we don't see, because there could be some other scales. And so that's a bit of a difficult thing, but you were asking me, what would be, good proposals or no, and I think a little bit that at least you can test a big part of the parameter space in a realistic way. But yeah, we have to live with the fact that sometimes ruling out things can be very difficult. And let me mention one other example, because I find this very relevant to the discussion and also a beautiful proposal. So Sugato Bose, a colleague of mine, who actually I used to work with him when I was here at Oxford in a senior research fellowship, he proposed an experiment that is to test quantum gravity. So I think he builds on something that Feynman proposed before, but in a time that you didn't have the advances of the quantum technologies that we have now. And then Sugato takes it, and Sugato and colleagues take it further by kind of stating how would you do this test nowadays, right? So the idea is that you have one particle in a superposition, but not only one, you need a second particle in another superposition. So you see already the challenge, we've been talking for a long time, of getting one in a superposition, and here you need two in a superposition. But anyway, so this side of the superposition you bring to get close to the other side of the superposition, and the idea is that if gravity entangles these particles, then gravity is quantum, because what the work done by them claims is that you need a quantum mediator to entangle. Now, I'm not going to comment on that because there are discussions and some people agree on if that's the case, or some people disagree on what the case, and there's a discussion. I don't want to chip into that discussion. What I want to talk about is the course in relevance to the question that you asked me about the experiments. No? Also, we were talking about how I put my bar like really high sometimes.
Yes.
That experiment is much more difficult to do than other experiments that I proposed in the past, like the gravitational wave detector and things like that. And that's where they're like, oh, you know, like I've kind of said, I'm maybe not gonna like push on this because that is really far away the line. And this is an example of an experiment that is really difficult to do, but you have a huge community working on it. And why not? I think they should be working on it because you find creative ways to overcome hurdles, and then you're successful. Like example is LIGO, right? At the beginning there were so many sources of noise, and then the community comes together, works together, you come up with new ideas on how to solve some of the problems, and there you go, they detected gravitational waves. So I'm very supportive of the experiment that they proposed and with the community following it. But it is a difficult one. But let's say like you have this situation. Now let's say that Diosi and Roger are right, and gravity collapses the wave function, right? So they're never, that doesn't mean that gravity is not quantum, but in my opinion, but they're never going to be able to test that if gravity collapses the wave function, because actually it happens at similar scales. So if Roger is and Diosi are correct and gravity collapses the wave function, boop, boop, they're going to, collapse that superposition, and then they won't see the effect proposed by Sugato and Bose and others. But that doesn't mean that what they're proposing is not there. What it just would mean is that the scales at which this effect exists are still pushed to scales where it's even more difficult to see. Right, because the scales where Sugato says that these things would get entangled are the same as the ones we would expect to see the collapse of the wave function. So if collapse happens, then you don't get entanglement because the state collapsed. But the state could still be getting entangled before the collapse at other scales that are maybe more difficult to access in the experiment. So you're not ruling out. So that's the thing, is that what we're looking for doesn't rule out the other experiment. It just, so I think that's kind of an interesting thing about when is an experiment, when is a theory completely ruled out or not, you know?
Thank you both for coming on.
No, thank you very much. It's been a big pleasure talking to you as always, and especially with Roger.
No, it's always been great fun. Thank you. Yes.
Kurt here. I'm glad you enjoyed that. I'm inferring that you enjoyed that because you're continuing to watch all the way up until this point. Now, it takes a huge amount of time to prepare for interviews like this. I study the guests' papers, I study adjacent fields, I construct quizzes for myself, and then perform those or test myself for weeks prior. I then also talk to the guests' colleagues often so that I ensure that I have the guest's point of view correct in my head and that I'm not wasting the guest's time or your time. It also takes a considerable amount of money to travel from a place like, say, Toronto to Oxford to film with Roger, or to film at Boston, at MIT, or Harvard. People think that YouTube ad revenue is high. However, in science and philosophy, they're one of the lowest paying categories. So I directly rely on the support from generous donors such as potentially yourself. If you have the funds and you're willing, then there are three primary ways to contribute. One is to become a founding member on Substack. Of course, becoming any paying member on Substack is great, but the founding member is the top tier. Number two is giving a one-time donation via PayPal. And number three is to give a one-time donation via crypto. Links to all of these are in the description. Many people think that Theories of Everything, this channel is a huge team, it's a huge production. Actually, it's just 2 or 3 people. It's myself and my wife, and of course the full-time editor who is editing this. Thank you. And that's all to say that your donations go a long way. Thank you for getting us over 500,000 YouTube subscribers. That's magnificent, and it's all thanks to you. Thank you.
Roger, let's focus on a retrospective of your views of quantum mechanics. You have some contrarian views, challenging the conventional wisdom and the foundations of quantum theory. So, roughly, what is your view, and what is the development? Is its developmental history?
Well, it really goes back to this Dirac lecture, where I didn't catch the explanation of why these things couldn't be in superposition. And this is all tied up with
There's
the fact
a person.
that quantum mechanics has 2 parts to it.
Do you like
One of these
quantum
parts
mechanics?
is the Schrodinger equation, if you like, or unitary evolution, or whatever
Here,
you like to call it.
I'll switch
and the
over.
other part is the collapse of a wave function. Now, some people sort of regard the second part as being really hidden in the environmental decoherence. Somehow when the environment gets involved in your quantum state, then it gets so complicated that you effectively have to reduce the state of the quantum. And I've always regarded that argument as not correct. And when I say always, probably not always, but certainly for a long time. And there are these famous arguments given by von Neumann and by Landau, which are very impressive people and very impressive arguments. The arguments are pretty good.
I'm a boomer. I don't know how anything works.
The arguments, but I rather regard them as being at what I call a double ontology shift. You say, how does the theory develop to the real world? I mean, what do you say is real in the theory? Well, you say the state vector is real, the wave function, if you like. The quantum state is real. And then you say, well, this state gets very complicatedly mixed up with the environment, and you say, well, I can't really keep track of the state. I'd rather do something else and make the density matrix. It's really saying I have now not one state, but a whole mess of different states, and that's my way of handling that. I construct this thing, a density matrix, which is a convenient way of handling the complicated mess of alternatives. And then you subtly shift your ontology, and you say that the density matrix, which is this thing you used to describe this mess of alternative states, the density matrix is describing reality. First ontology shift. And then you say, you do some various rotations of your matrices and things you're allowed to do here, and you now take your density matrix and you put it in the form where it's diagonal. And then when you say it's diagonal, you say, ooh, those diagonal terms represent probabilities. Probabilities of what? Of quantum states. You shifted back to your original ontology by imagining to cheat somehow by wandering through the different ontology. And when you're in the other ontology, you're allowed to rotate your state into the density matrix, and then you say those diagonal terms represent probabilities of states again. So your ontology has gone back to states, but you've managed to reduce the state without saying it out loud. And I thought this is a
I don't know what happened. Every time I get a visitor, then it kicks me off of my stream. I don't know how to see if there's anybody in the chat. I just use it on my phone, but every time I get a visitor, I get kicked out of the stream.
And it must be right.
So,
Say that it's got this huge flaw in it.
and and it won't let me start the video.
I'm not quite sure. I'm maybe accusing people of a view. I think they just find it too complicated and they give up at this point. I don't like to give up, and my view is not to give up. It's to say we've got to tackle this problem head on. That the state reduction is something which is missing in quantum mechanics. It's a sort of view that Einstein had and Schrödinger had. I'm a little ruder than they were, I think. They said, well, quantum mechanics is a different phraseology somehow. Not that it's wrong, but it's incomplete. That's right. They say it's incomplete. I say it's not incomplete so much. It's just incorrect. And that's a little bit ruder, you see.
So what follows from that, from your view? If it is not just incomplete, but incorrect,
Yes.
because you've had that double ontological manipulation in order to get the probabilities.
Yes.
What's the alternative?
Well, you've got to supply a theory of state reduction, and that is a missing ingredient. It's led me, you see, I've certainly held that view in general terms for quite a long time. I've then specialized the view down to a certain prediction for the lifetime of a state. And when I hit on this, I was rather disturbed to find that Lajos Diossi had thought of my lifetime about 2 years before I had, which is fine. I always give them credit. He didn't have the same motivation, but then I changed my motivations anyway, so I can't blame him for that. I didn't have my particular motivations till quite a bit later. I've been trying to pin this down. It was sometime at round about the turn of the century, but I can't quite find the right papers to where I stated this in a clear way. But it goes back to the conflict
Oh,
between
okay.
the two
Sure.
basic principles of the two great theories of 20th century physics, general relativity and quantum mechanics. What is the basic principle of general relativity? It's the principle of equivalence. That is to say that the gravitational field is equivalent to acceleration. This goes back to Galileo, of course, when he talked about dropping a big rock and a little rock from the Leaning Tower of Pisa, and he said, of course, if you drop a feather, it drops more slowly, of course, but that's air resistance. He knew what was going on. He was very good at this. And Galileo also had this rather nice description I often like to use: fireworks. The fireworks go up, they make a burst, and a beautiful sphere of sparks. As the sphere stops, it remains a sphere. I find this very striking. I was a great fan of Galileo. I read all his books, and I found this extremely striking. And Newton, of course, picked up on it, and this is a very basic feature of his own theory of gravity. Now, what I'm claiming is that the principle of equivalence is at odds with the principle of superposition. And so I consider a sort of thought experiment, or almost a real experiment, a thought experiment. You're doing an experiment on a tabletop, and you want to take into account the Earth's gravitational field. Now, there are two ways you could do this. One is what one calls, say, the Newtonian way, which is to say there is just another force. And you put that force into your Hamiltonian, and you plug away in the normal way that most sensible quantum physicists would do. They just regard the gravitational field as another force, put it into the Hamiltonian, and plug away in the normal way. And then you say, well, you notice Einstein and Galileo sitting in the corners of the room, mentally, and you think, no, I've got to take their perspective into consideration. There is no gravitational field. It's simply you're using an accelerated frame. So let us do the same calculation with an accelerating frame. And you come out with almost the same answer. The key, of course, is in the almost. it's exactly the same expression, which is really striking enough in itself, exactly the same expression, apart from the fact that your wave function has a phase factor which is different. You usually say, well, the phase factor doesn't count. You're going to square the state, you're going to square the moduli and you're going to get a probability out of it. And when you get your probability, you don't care about the phase factor. However, it's not really quite true, because if you're worrying about quantum field theory, you've got to worry about the phase factor. You have a different vacuum. So it means that you're really working in a different vacuum. Does that really matter? Stick to your vacuum and you're all right.
Welcome to the state of Azeroth. Together we will experience the Midnight Expansion. So what does this all mean? The adorable Rufus, who will be available in both modern and classic WoW.
The training grounds for players new to PvP.
Housing. You've been asking for this feature since the early days of WoW.
The new Void-themed Devourer range specialization. And much more. Thank you so much for being a part of the journey with us.
We've got great news. Your nearest Dollar General just got some upgrades. It's brighter and cleaner to bring you a
Hello.
better shopping experience. Stop in today. Shop the brands you know.
No, not right now. Why?
Would you want to come over to Grandma's and try on your new clothes?
Give me a little bit. Sure.
Okay, you probably are all right at this stage. However,
Oh
let's
yeah.
change the experiment slightly.
Heck yeah.
I consider that in this experiment there is a
To be
block
here when you
of
do here. I just want to let you know
rings
that
or
we were
something
home and that
which is put into a superposition of two locations, or it could be a speck in the atmosphere. It could be a little speck, and it could be quite significantly big in quantum mechanical terms. It can be bigger than Planck mass. It's likely to be bigger than Planck mass. And you could put that into a superposition of two locations and try and do that, try and carry out your quantum state where there's a subset of the state, a unit in the state, which is put into a quantum superposition. And then you try to adopt the Einsteinian perspective, and then you say,
Oh,
well,
sorry.
that was really an acceleration. And then you go around and say, well, then you get
Focused
close
on
to the speck
something.
of dust. It's in a superposition of two locations. And so how do I do that? Well, what I do is what any good physicist would do. I cheat.
Yeah,
I
that's
say,
nice.
well, I know I should be
Oh
using
yeah.
the frame of that
Put the hood
dust,
up. Yeah, let me see the.
taking that into
Yeah, that
consideration.
should be nice and
Let's
warm.
not do that. Let's use the Newtonian perspective and say it's not quite right. I should be using the other perspective. And what I'm going to do is keep track of the error in not using that.
Yeah.
And then I integrate that error over the whole of space.
Sure.
And I do fiddle around with the mathematics,
Well, I'll just.
the parts, and fiddle around a bit. And I come to an uncertainty in the mass of the whole
I
state.
think I'm gonna.
And then I say that
I think
uncertainty
I'm
about
gonna
the
leave my
state.
clothes over there because there's just way
Physics,
too much hair over here.
nuclear physics, they say that if you have
Yeah,
an
that's nice.
unstable
No, I like maroon a lot.
unstable nucleus, it has an uncertainty in its energy or mass energy. That uncertainty is inversely related to its
Good.
lifetime, and that's the
Give
time
me a tie.
energy Heisenberg uncertainty relationship.
Oh, did you need it? Did you need a
And
tie?
I
I'll
say
find
this
mine. They got to be
lifetime
around here
of the
somewhere.
speck of
Well,
dust
we
in
can
two
read it on if
locations
you want me to.
can be calculated from this.
If you find me
What?
something.
It's actually quite easy to describe. I say take the
Yeah,
speck
if you
of
find me
dust,
something real
and if you
nice, I'll
imagine
wear
it's
it.
a superposition of two
There you go.
locations,
Okay.
how
Good.
much energy would it cost me to pull that speck of dust
Okay.
away
Thank
from
you.
its mate in superposition, considering only the gravitational force, the gravitational field, no other, nothing physical, no, nothing electromagnetic, no. Only the
I was
gravitational
there.
force of that
Yeah.
speck of dust on itself as it's pulled away.
Yeah.
How much
Well, you know.
energy does that cost you? The reciprocal of that energy is the lifetime. And this was the same as the Diyoshi
Oh.
lifetime, as I later found out. Not with this, I've given a sort of rough argument. It is a genuine physical argument that if you take the principle of equivalence, the serious thing, that is to say, the dropping and the not dropping,
Listening to this one time is like your voice talking to me, telling me and guiding me through or something.
Principle of equivalence
Yeah.
and the principle of superposition in quantum mechanics. You take them both seriously, you run into a contradiction, or at least a tension between the two. And this tension says there's something wrong, and the tension says you have a lifetime, and this lifetime is something which I've worked on or believed in ever since. I don't
Yeah.
think I had this particular lifetime, which was the Diyoshi lifetime, until round about the turn of the century. I believed that it was gravity but before that. But I didn't have that argument.
Many, of course, have recognized the problems that you talk about in quantum mechanics
Yeah,
and
those are
come up
teeny
with
tiny.
other kinds of
A
theories,
lot smaller than ours.
hidden variables, pilot waves, which seems to be have been contradicted. But the other
Yeah,
theory
that's
of
tiny.
the multi-world interpretation has actually been, since Everett came up with it in 1950s. It languished for a long time and
Yeah.
seems to have grown
Yeah.
among many physicists as a
Yep.
an explanation that, as they put it, it takes the Schrodinger equation seriously and doesn't require the kind of collapse that we're trying to wrestle with, but really treats it seriously and recognizes all these different extrapolations or extensions of the world based on this multi-world theory. How do you
Yep.
react to that, and why do you see that trend continuing to grow?
Well,
I didn't know it was continuing, and I'm rather
that
disappointed.
all depends
I, it certainly
how
used to be
quickly
quite
James
intense.
signs the
The
paper.
philosophy department in Oxford was very keen on it. I don't feel they're as big as they used to be because one of the
Yeah, but
fellows left and went
the
to
point is that if we wait
both the
until he doesn't sign the paper, then we'll probably have run out of time to get them in
yeah, I
time.
never thought it was a good idea.
Yeah.
I think it's an example of something that, you see, I used to say
He
it's one
has
thing
to
to
sign and say
believe
that he
in a
is broke,
theory
doesn't have money for it, we can
for a
pay for
period of
it.
time,
Give me
even
him.
if you think it's wrong. To try and believe in a
Great, you
theory,
gonna keep those
the
safe?
shorter the better. And
Grandma,
I had
you
a
got
period
those?
of thinking that the many
Okay.
worlds point of view was a good idea. I can't remember how long it was.
I
It
want to
might
go
have
down to
been
Breeze, but at the same time, I don't. I really want to take a nap.
it was certainly not as short as some people, or not as long as some people. Um,
And so I can understand the motivation for coming up with it, for believing in it, because it has this elegance of taking the Schrodinger equation seriously, quote unquote. But what then changed your view? What then got you
I
out of
had a lot of fun with
thinking that
MRC and
that
Grandma.
is a good solution?
Yeah, good.
well, it doesn't. I think I had some pictures in my books that of you see, branches one way, then it should branch the other way, and so on. And it really, when you think about it, doesn't really make any sense. I mean, what your consciousness is it taking a root in this branch, and then all the other roots it might be taking, and somehow those branches all coexist? Then I imagine why aren't they the other way, coexisting the other way? And if you start to think about this
Doesn't
very
think about it.
serious way, you see, I used to have long discussions with David Deutsch. He was a lot strong believer. I don't know whether he still is.
Yeah.
He certainly was a long time after I gave up on it. I don't remember, I don't think I was believing in it for any length. I don't think believing in it even was a term I would apply to it. I think I perhaps took it seriously for a length of time which I certainly
That's
couldn't
really
have
cool.
been the
And then it
30 some
says,
Oh,
probably
okay.
not as long as a year. But I do remember, you see, when I went to
Oh,
Princeton, right the first time, this
you
was
know, and it
in
sounds so good.
1959, I think it was, and Wheeler was quite keen on this
I
sort of
can't
thing.
hear it through the
You
phone
see, I
for
think
some
Oh, you
reason.
can't?
Everett was
For
really
some
the
odd reason.
substitute for
What the
Wheeler.
heck? Oh, I
But
think I have
Wheeler
my voice isolation
didn't
on.
have the,
Yep, probably.
I don't know, he didn't want to sort of
Oh, dang.
publicize
It's
himself
so
as
pretty
having this view
sounding.
in some sense.
I'll record a
Wheeler
video
was a
with it for
complicated
you.
character,
Because it sounds so
and I
good.
think he was very keen that
Alright,
Everett
click and then
was
wait.
able to take the burden of
No,
this
you're
sort of
totally
thing
fine. I just had
off
to
his
fix something.
shoulders. Something of that nature was going on.
We got one black one
I
and
think
one white one.
Wheeler didn't want to put his name to it in a way,
Green.
but in a certain sense, he was keen on that idea. I suppose it had to do with the consciousness view as well, that it needed a theory of how do I put it? I would need to analyze my historical development of thinking because I think there were a lot of different thoughts going on at once. And there was a view, for example, that it was consciousness that collapsed the wave function.
Yes.
And I
Thank you.
remember having talks with Vigna. You see,
The
Vigna was
box to
supposed
my
to be
wind
great
chime.
for
I'm gonna
proving
need
what
to be
I
able to
do,
transport it when I go
but
to move.
somehow it was the conscious
Okay.
being looking at the state
So
which made it reduce
first
to one or
step,
the other.
we got
And I did talk
Grandma
to Vigna
found
about
these
this, was
and
rather struck
wanted
by
to
the
get
fact that he
them, but I
didn't
was like,
own
you
it
know
as
what? I'm
strongly as
taking
he
those.
seemed
Those
to
are gonna
be
be
held
mine,
out
and
to.
I took them
He
because they
seemed
were
to think
$2 a
it was
bowl.
an alternative that he
Cool.
might take seriously, but
These are
was not really
gorgeous. They got like a purple
necessarily his
line
own view.
around it,
Yeah, I
and
want to
then
eat.
there's a
I'm not
little
sure about that.
butterfly in
But
this side.
I want to
the
eat
fact
ramen out
is
of it
that view
Yeah, that's what Grandma
was
said.
just
Biggest soup
simply
bowl
that
or ramen bowl ever,
with
and
something
there's
like
two.
the
chopsticks.
Earth,
Yeah,
I
and
suppose
Marcy said cereal
this
bowl.
planet just didn't happen to
Imagine that.
develop.
We gotta try that ramen
There was
place.
no life on the planet, and if you think it was life that somehow collapsed the wave function,
Yeah, something.
there was no collapse on that. So you imagine there's a spacecraft which goes on to, with no people on the spacecraft,
It's not
and it
bad.
takes a photograph of the weather on that
You will
planet.
need
That's
bowls,
what it was
so it's
supposed to be
fine.
canvassing. There are no butterflies, and therefore the weather, which is supposed to be a system which depends very delicately on initial conditions.
Yeah,
Um,
chaos theory, chaos.
yes, chaotic system. That's right.
You know,
And
you remember
so, if there
the
were no
little
butterflies
camper
to
van?
flap their wings and produce this initial
Yeah.
heat,
Hmm.
then the thing would just be a superposition of different
Nice.
weathers. And the
Yeah.
spacecraft takes a photograph of that, returns to the Earth. It's taken several light years to go out and light years to come back. And finally,
Discount
it finds
Central
that
Perk.
it's close enough to the Earth to send a signal. Somebody sitting on the Earth has got a screen in front of him or her, and this picture on the
Heck
screen,
yeah.
as soon as the person looks at it, flicks to one or the other. Doesn't make any sense. It's like you'll go back to make the planet backwards in time to be one or the other.
There you go.
Can you see? So
Hmm.
There's a lot of
Yeah, that
assumptions you
one's
have to
tough.
make there, and
Yeah,
That one's
it's
that
gonna
pretty
be
makes
hard.
detailed.
perfect sense. I agree.
it's curiously how one of the ways it
Right.
doesn't make sense. It's like
That one's got some detail.
And that's balanced by the idea that you're taking the wave function
Oh yeah, that's
seriously,
weird.
and so
Cute
that's
little
the
bows on
tension
them.
between the two.
Yeah, cute.
but there's beautiful coda to that
They were like
scene,
house
which maybe
clothes
we
or
could get to
something.
at some point.
Yeah, okay.
Thank you for watching. If you like this video,
Cool,
please
cool,
like
cool.
and comment below. You can support Closer to Truth by subscribing.
What you guys about to eat over there?
Closer to Truth is now accepting your tax-exempt donations.
Oh.
Please come to
Okay.
closertotruth.com/donate. Thank you very much for supporting us, and thanks for watching.
It's time for a new kind of value menu.
Yeah.
Hello, Panera's new mix and match menu. Just $4.99 each when you choose two or more faves like these. The new mix
Oh,
and match menu
and
at Panera.
I have
That's a real
decided I want to
a
get
meal.
this cross. What do you
Trying to
think?
add my son to our car insurance. I'm scared to even think about
It's
it.
not focusing. Oh, there it goes.
Yeah.
It was either between this one or this cross up here
No, I
because I
like
really liked the detail on it, but this
I
one
like
is
that
more
one.
Jeffrey.
Yeah. It just looks better in general, but you're right, it is way more Jeffrey too.
My son's safe driving score saves us even more.
I would get this one for
It feels good to take control of your wallet. It feels good to
It's
Geico.
the Tree of Life.
Right?
She
I
would love
I
that.
so want to get another necklace, but I'll
It's
just
just
fucking lose
it's
it.
so hard.
Yeah, and I
That's why I'm
lose them.
worried about getting this one. It's a $60 necklace. That means it's the extra easy for me as well.
Right.
So that's
Welcome to Closer to Truth. I'm
Right.
speaking with Sir Roger Penrose, a personal retrospective, his intellectual and scientific development of his remarkable career. Roger is a distinguished pure mathematician, mathematical physicist, and Nobel laureate in physics. The Emeritus Rose Ball Professor of Mathematics at the University of Oxford, Roger has distinct views on the philosophy of science, the nature of reality, the foundations of physics, theories of
Right.
cosmology, and the essence of mind and consciousness. We're going to explore them all. Roger, it's great to see you again.
Hello, good to see you too.
This is our fourth Closer to Truth. We did 2007 in January, so that's more than 18 years ago at Oxford, in 2014, and then a few years ago, 2022 online, and this is our fourth in 2025. So I thought you'd try to do something a little
It's just
bit
so
different, kind of
comfy.
a personal retrospective, tracing your intellectual or scientific history of each of your
I
major
need this.
contributions. The
I might.
developmental
Do you think
arc,
I
the
should try and keep
challenges
this
you
folder
faced, the
nearby in
moments
case
you
I have
had,
any
your
more paperwork
responses,
I need you to
and
fill
your
out?
reflections
Yeah,
on
for now.
the future.
Because I can, like, when I
Just
get
to
his
get
death
your inner
certificate and
thoughts.
stuff,
We'll
I
deal with
can
each
keep
of the
that in
topics, but I
this.
want to
Yep,
start
that's
with
what I
Oh,
did.
and
a retrospective of thinking of your approach to the deep nature of reality. And let's start with your philosophy of science, because
I got
you've
those.
challenged conventional wisdom in
I
many
don't want to go to
respects.
Breeze, but here I go.
Quantum mechanics, cosmology,
Do you
quantum
like this cross?
essentialism as approach
Look at
to
this one.
consciousness.
It's
Yeah.
got
You've
their
created
praying hands in the middle, and then
part of the
it has a
conventional
verse.
wisdom, the way we understand black holes.
What verse?
Intimately involved with
Philippines
virtue. So let's
4:13.
start with
Though
your
Christ who
philosophy of science,
strengthens me, I
both
can
the
do
units
all
of science,
things.
of
There you
mathematics,
go.
of philosophy.
Yeah, it's nice.
Well, that's
Yeah.
very
It
difficult.
backs really well with the
Difficult to
outfit,
answer
so
because I
that's why
don't
I
know
should have the
how
other one.
special
Oh.
belief
Yep.
in that.
The other
I
one would match good
personally
with this
think that
outfit too.
Uh-huh. Dressed in
philosophy
all black.
is based on mathematics,
Well,
but
not
I certainly
completely.
don't believe that
Yeah, the
philosophy
shoes don't really match,
necessarily finds a
but
right
they look
answer
good anyway.
I
that
think they
is
do.
decided, if you like.
They're
Well, they
white.
A
really
small
look cool.
portion
They're
of
white and blue.
mathematics appears to have relevance to physics, and just because some
Yeah, they're your cleanest
mathematical
shoes
ideas
for sure.
are broad-ranging and so
But
on,
they're white
Yeah,
and
it's
blue.
it's
have really much to say about whether it applies to physics or not, as far as I can make out. On the other hand,
You
there
don't
are
like
some
heels?
things in mathematics which struck me when I first
love
learnt about them.
heels.
I
Love wearing
think
heels.
I would say particularly complex numbers. When I
Yeah,
first
right.
learnt about
I get it.
complex numbers, I found the subject so beautiful that I see I'm contradicting myself here, that I thought it must have
And
something to do with physics. And when I found out that quantum mechanics really was based on complex numbers, I found this extremely satisfying.
Reminding you of your
One of the
childhood.
most important
Yep.
discoveries in the field of science and health over the last decade or so is the discovery that our gut health, in particular the little
alrighty,
teeny
I think I'm gonna go.
microbiota that live in our
I'm
gut
gonna
and the
use the
neurons that
bathroom,
reside
and
in our
then
gut
I
are
think I'm
very
gonna go to
important not
Breeze
just for the
and
health of
see
our
my
digestion, but
vitamin.
also all of that impacts what's
Try and
happening
deal
at
with
the
this
level of your
prosecution
brain,
stuff, even though
energy,
I
every
don't have
organ
anything
system,
to
and
do with
more.
it.
AG1 is
Yeah.
designed
Well,
to
at least
support
you'll
your
get
gut
their
microbes.
take on what's
For
going to
example, our
happen.
probiotics
Just
Yeah.
prepare
line
yourselves
AG1
for
now includes 5 new clinically studied
this
probiotics
being
to
an
help
uphill
improve
battle.
gut
I don't think it will be, but
to
it
help
could
and
be,
immune system
Yeah,
health, as well as
exactly,
to
because
improve
she's
bowel
an
regularity and
ex-cop.
to reduce bloating. Many
supposedly.
probiotics
Yeah,
survive in
supposedly.
acidic environments, which
Yeah.
means they can be
Dum dum.
effectively maintained
Alrighty, I
natively in
love you.
powder. The
I
new
love
formulation
you.
of AG1 has
Bye.
all of the
Bye.
same great quality and taste as the previous versions, but it also has these new expanded panel of probiotics, multivitamins, B vitamin complex, and I should mention that all of that's added to the new formulation of AG1 with no additional cost to the customer.
And so what can we infer from that? That there was this element of mathematics, complex numbers, which did have this physical explanatory power. Um, is that an isolated case, or can you infer generality from that?
I don't know. You see, I think it's very difficult to generalize these things.
Uh-huh.
And I was saying, contradicting myself in just a few words, because I just found that complex numbers were such a wonderful subject that I somehow felt it should have something to do with physics. And that was really contradicting my previous comment to say that just because the mathematical topic seems beautiful and broad ranging, that one shouldn't take the view that it has anything to do with physics.
Well, that's actually a profound idea, that sense of internal contradiction, because it really makes the whole process more exciting.
Yes. You see, there are different things. You see, there are complex numbers, and then you see Hamilton was really struck when he found quaternions, and this was such a beautiful idea, and somehow it had to do with physics. And the trouble with quaternions, from my point of view, is it looks as though you have a positive definite.
Hmm.
The way that mathematics works so well in physics, when we think of space-time, it works so well in four dimensions with a signature 1 plus and 3 minuses. Now, you might think of that as a very arbitrary collection of pluses and minuses and so on. But my own view is that it's very crucial, because if you look at this another way, you find that's a really fundamental, well, the signature, that is, in the number of pluses and minuses, is a fundamental thing, and the fact that it's 1 plus and 3 minuses is really fundamental. And that has to do with its relation with spinors. And this was something, you see, I learned about spinors from Dirac. And it's quite curious because the story is a little bit confusing. You see, I should go back and say, when I entered Cambridge to do research, I was doing research in pure mathematics. I was working in algebraic geometry. However, I struck up a great friendship with Dennis Sharma. Dennis Sharma was a good friend of my brother's, and I remember, I think it was an event in the Kingswood restaurant in Cambridge. I was visiting my brother, and I had some comment, puzzle, about Fred Hoyle's lectures on cosmology, and something he said didn't make sense to me. And so I asked my brother, and he's, well, I don't know much about cosmology, but sitting over on that table over there is a friend of mine, and he'll tell you the answer. So I went down and sat next to Dennis Sharma, and I described to him my little puzzle about what Fred Hoyle had said. And rather than giving me the answer, he said, "Oh, I'll go and ask Fred about that. That's Fred Hoyle." And so, but I think he must have been rather impressed by my question, because when I did get to Cambridge, and Dennis made a beeline to talk to me and try to convert me to physics, which he sort of did, in the fact that I became very interested in physics. Talking to him, he was a very good expositor.
What,
He told
Pooh
me
Bear?
some foundational things about physics. He also told me an important thing, which was, you see, he was a great proponent of the steady state model. That is, that the universe expands and expands and keeps on expanding, and then you have hydrogen produced, and this hydrogen spontaneously is produced, and it just keeps on going like that. And he was very fond of this model, and I got very converted to it. And then when the microwave background was discovered, Dennis, very shortly, when he became convinced about it, he would change his lectures, and he would say
Oh,
I was wrong.
bro,
And I
what?
found that really
I gotta
impressive.
eat some food
He could turn around and
before I mess
explain
with that.
something that was so.
That's what I'm gonna do. Stream broke anyway.